Hello and good evening to y'all. Re-examination show in a very rare late night stream. VK is going on right now. Rev Russ, I think, is back. I think they said that his wife was with him. Don't know how to get a hold of that guy. Mo Rebuttal could be dropping in today. Today I'm doing a stream about past debates I've done on the topic of atheism or atheism in general. Also, B.S. Lewis is doing a stream right now. Everybody's doing a stream right now. Ryan, Tacos, all these people. So I want to kind of review discussions I've had concerning different brands of atheism, different topics touching atheism.
Okay. I feel guilty because I wanted to just talk to the chat because
This is me talking to Shiva, also known as Skylike Mind. You can see that down here. Feel free to like and subscribe. He has the most epic voice.
Working on stuff right now, but I just didn't mind asking questions. But it's interesting that you say that truth is recognized in individual statements. Is that a fair representation of what you're getting at?
So it seemed to me earlier in the chat, I was going back and forth with him in his side chat, saying to him on his live stream, well, how do you understand truth? And what I mean is as a cohesive, singular, transcendent body of, I'd call it the mind of God. It would be the thing that holds reality together or defines reality and defines the relationships of certain kinds of reality with each other and categorizes them according to their nature and on what plane they exist on. And so he seemed to think that truth was found in individual claims, individual statements about a particular thing. So I'm saying that truth transcends reality and binds all things together. And he seems to think, at least the way he phrased it, that truth was dependent upon what you're talking about and is visited upon and examined on an individual basis, which I don't quite understand, but that's okay.
I would say that truth is a property of propositions. So the sun is neither true nor false.
So if you say truth is a property of propositions, it just sounds like truth does transcend something, and then you try and introduce your standard. You try and introduce individual statements into your standard and examine them into the light, as if, say, there was a campfire and you could see something beyond the campfire and you wanted to bring it towards a campfire. It seemed like truth would be the light from that campfire examining the individual statements you would have. At least that's how it appears to me, how it's really structured. But to say that truth is on an individual basis as if the statement itself is true, well, it has to be examined by the same standard as you would examine any other thing. I don't know how that's separate from or different from my view.
But statements about the sun can be.
Okay, so the sun, he says, can either be true or false, but statements about the sun can be, yeah, because the sun itself obviously is not a proposition. The sun is made of matter and energy.
Okay, I probably have to think a little more on the statement of the sun is neither true or false. I agree that, yeah, the sun in and of itself, we're talking about the matter and energy that subsists of the sun, is not a statement about the world. Mm-hmm. Then yes, I agree with that.
Right.
Correct. So, but when I say truth, what I mean is the that which is real in sum total, and that includes all categories of truth, like legal truth and moral truth.
I mean, wait. When you're saying, to me, when you're saying, because I don't know what you're talking about when you say truth, unless you, what you think truth is that it's a property of statements. But if you're saying that truth is some kind of thing that exists in the universe.
If you want to get literal, I believe that.
Yeah. So when you said truth is a thing, whenever I think of how some people use the word thing, and he's not a materialist. He is a type of Buddhist, so he has some kind of, it would seem, spiritual aspect to his belief system. But when you say that truth is a type of thing, it sounds like a created object or a something that is an environment in which things live or subsist in, that it mimics matter or mimics an environment in one way or another. It's hard to even explain what I'm trying to say, but some people think of reality as an aquarium tank, in sort of where things live inside, and then I don't know. It just seems like when he says truth is a thing, as if it's something that's lumped in with the recipe of the universe. It's just one thing of many things in there. I don't know how he can subsist on without having truth being a transcendent definitional thing, if you want to call it that. But it's something that transcends all things altogether. Because when you make it into a particular level about individual claims, then why would do different standards judge different claims, or is there one standard that can categorize everything and make statements about everything?
Truth is a person, specifically that truth is the person
Right.
Jesus Christ. So there's that. But what I'm getting at, and I won't spend too much time on this call because I don't want to like distract too much from your thing. I just want to have
Right.
but I feel bad for teasing you in the chat, so I wanted to give you some back and forth.
I would say that the assertion that the truth is a person embodied in Jesus Christ, that's a bold claim that would require justification.
Okay.
It's interesting. So the question I could ask is it true that it requires justification? And then, so what he's kind of asserting here is that there is a tribunal of sorts that is objective and judges what claims are bold and what claims are less bold, what claims are conservative, and what claims are a little more wild and out there. And so when you say, for example, or you imply that you're going to need more evidence for your view here, you're going to need these criteria satisfied. What you're saying is there is an objective truth, something lies at the center of that, and you have to submit all your claims to that center of it in order for it to be evaluated correctly. That's how it reads to me. I wasn't even prepared to go into like a debate. I was more or less just trying to get my arms around what he was thinking, because I just don't understand the Eastern thought.
And I would say that truth, because there are personal realities, and those personal realities, we are also persons, and we're accountable for how we live as persons, and we relate to the things around us, and that therefore truth must be personal. I mean, I'm kind of like reverse engineering from the conclusion a little bit, but I think there are observations which can lend itself to the understanding that truth must be personal, because otherwise
Now, when I say reverse engineering from the conclusion, I am trying to use a type of argumentation that would draw a person who is reasonable to a conclusion, outside of, say, using a presuppositionalist framework where I could say to the person, well, you are presupposing the God of the Bible too, you're just suppressing the truth and unrighteousness. I could say that, or I could try and take them from where they're at and say, look, we live in a universe where if there was no person that was foundational to the existence of the universe, then how does personal reality, personal truth, personal aspects of what exists actually arrive? How does personhood come about from an impersonal source? How does something that does not think, does not create, does not, I mean, to even say that something is creative is to talk about how vibrant and interesting something is. It's usually how we use it. If, oh, so-and-so is creative, what we're saying is it works, it's good, it took thought and feeling to come up with whatever they've done. They're using multiple aspects of what is true in order to craft whatever they make that we're calling creative in the first place. So I don't understand how you can say that we live in a universe where there are persons and yet we don't have a personal foundation of the universe that could arise. How does that even, if concepts themselves aren't even real to the laws of physics, matter, and energy, then how could personhood arise from that?
Truth was merely
Impersonal.
material or just energy, impersonal, conceptual, then where is the relationship between us and each other? Where's the relationship between us and matter? Why are there relationships at all? Unless God is a relational being who
yeah, those are all very good questions, but the fact that those questions exist doesn't mean that truth is a thing that exists independently of statements.
Okay, well then the question is, what unifies these statements? And then if he asks, well, why do the statements have to be unified? Well, then I would ask, well, if the statements are unified, then how can truth be split into anything but being unified? How do you have a coherent understanding of how to evaluate something? If there can be two kinds of competing truths that are mutually exclusive and even contradictory to each other, then how can you know how to evaluate anything? So to say that just because those questions exist doesn't mean that the truth can be personal, what does mean something? Does anything actually mean anything? If you can't lead to a conclusion from what I would see as a necessary premise of the source of truth being personal, then what is your alternative? It's just saying that, well, maybe it can happen in a way we haven't thought of yet, but you can say that about anything. If you would say that, oh, I believe evolution's true, well, you could say, well, maybe there's just some other third option that we haven't even discovered yet. You could say that till the cows come home for any claim, but if that's just conjecture at best, this doesn't actually help with the kinds of understanding we have now.
Yeah, I think the statements are the statements of the mind of God, and I'm not able to, like, in the course of this call, prove that. But that's what I believe, and I'm just gonna.
And when I say prove that, I mean prove it to Shiva's satisfaction, because obviously, it's interesting because later on Shiva says that presuppositionalism is the weakest, and I wonder if the reason he says that is because he's seen only the crappiest kinds of presuppositionalism there have been out there. Perhaps he would, if he saw something that was much stronger, more robust, he would change his mind. But he's a pretty strong-willed individual. Love you, Shiva. But yeah, we have differences here, and I wasn't prepared to go into a debate for this, but this is still something that's interesting to go over.
At least tell you that.
Right, okay. I mean, if you're just owning it as an article of faith, that's fine. I don't argue against articles of faith in the same way, although the only because I have articles of faith, but I think perhaps the difference between your articles of faith and mine are that mine are held provisionally, and so if
I take it by provisionally, he means that unless he finds new information in which he will later change his mind. That's why I take it. And then I'm more dogmatic. I think that's the allegation that's going on here.
Something comes along that seems to conclusively demonstrate a view I hold wrong, or just shows it to be that it's untenable to hold that view, then I'll drop.
My question is, if he is open to the idea that his view that he currently holds is wrong, what is his understanding of truth? What is his understanding of logic that would stand to not only defeat my view, but also defeat the view that he currently has? That would be an interesting thing to explore.
The view.
Yeah. So what, when you say untenable, like what caused you to choose the framework that you chose for what truth is?
Well, I mean, that's
pretty much where I go.
Like, we're kind of switching gears now because we're kind of moving from philosophy to my own personal experience, which is unique to me and doesn't mean anything about truth itself. It only tells you about my relationship to certain types of statements.
Sure, and I don't mean to pry or make you uncomfortable. I was taking it merely as like either maybe you use a deductive approach or an inductive approach, or you have justifications to the
it sort of depends. Oh, right.
I think he was meaning that the different experiences of his life have shaped his belief systems and how he processes things, how he thinks about things, but it's not coming from a place where he did specific logically only exploration, but rather the things that he has experienced have convinced him so far of one nature of the universe compared to others.
Right. Yeah, it sort of depends. Like it depends on what the truth claim is. If it's something mathematical, then I'll use a purely deductive approach, right? Whereas if it's something that's a truth claim about the world, then I suppose I'll use a more inductive approach, or at least probabilistic.
Well, that's interesting because now what he's doing is he's making claims about what is the right way to think about different categories of truth, which tells me that he believes that the universe is united in the same reality, that they're subject to, while there's different kinds of reasoning for different kinds of categories, it is still true that those different kinds of categories require different kinds of reasoning in order to grapple them and understand them. So it's interesting if somehow he knows intrinsically what kind of reasoning to use for what kind of categories for what kind of things. I wonder if he would admit to the idea of being convinced that his way of reasoning for each category is wrong, and he needs to switch his style of reasoning for material truths, mathematical truths, or anything like that. I wonder how open his mind really is, or how fixed his mind really is to each of his modes of thinking.
Until I can ascertain whether the truth claim is true or not, i.e. accords with what's actually happening. Just speaking colloquially, if it's a truth claim about whether or not I like ice cream, it doesn't seem to me that I need to know, like, do anything other than check my own experience.
Mm-hmm.
So
would you say it would be objectively true, regardless, like stance independent, that
right.
supposing that you like ice cream, that you do like ice cream regardless of if the entire world said otherwise?
Would it be true?
Yes, even
though it wouldn't be
experience with ice cream.
Yeah,
it doesn't mean that's not objective.
Yeah. So I think the assuming that I am being honest and all of that, and that I know myself well enough to know whether I like ice cream or not, then and I did. Yeah, and I did actually like ice cream. Then I think the statement "I like ice cream" would be it would be conventionally true.
Conventionally true. I wonder if I could. Hey, Aiden. I thought you'd be over at BS's stream, Aiden, or maybe on VK or something like that. I've seen a few lurkers here. I got to 3. I would figure all the mod squad would be over at BS Lewis's stream for Ladies' Night. But yes, doing a little stream on atheism, which I guess who isn't these days, right?
Now, if you want to say that's objectively true, I wouldn't necessarily have any kind of disagreement with that, but there people seem to attach a whole lot of baggage to the word objective.
Yeah,
I agree that people attach a whole lot of baggage to the word objective, but the question is it stance independent, regardless of what your worldview is? Is it true independently of contingent minds? That would be the question.
Modeling it after in this sentence was that regardless of what anybody else would say, the fact that you are having a subjectively pleasant, favorable experience of ice cream, and you hold that state currently, would still be true regardless of what the thoughts of anybody else would be. That's all I'm isolating for.
Yeah. And like, if you were to say that the sun burns at whatever temperature the sun is at, like that would be objectively true, like using whatever scale you're using, right? Like I don't,
right.
I think one of the ways that I like to think about objective versus subjective truth is with color, right? Because some people are colorblind, and so you might have 2 people who are looking at a tree and they'll see different colored leaves, and that might be their subjectively true experience, but the wavelength of light is going to be the same for both of them, and that's objective.
Right. Yeah.
No disagreements there.
And I think both those who are colorblind and not colorblind can understand and accept that without any, any whatever you want to call it. But yeah. I have not prepared a whole lot of like notes. I just like my thing is more like trying to get my arms around like what you believe versus what I believe, in a sense of like, okay, where are the differences? And here's how I understand things. Here's how I answer these questions in my mind. And your view is so much different than mine that I just,
Well,
it's just interesting.
I suppose like I've been
that.
an atheist since I was 4. And
As a long time to know that you've been an atheist. I mean, it almost sounds like something you determine after the fact, something you look back upon and you say to yourself, oh, that's when it started, even if I didn't consciously realize it. I mean, at 4 years old, I remember watching Star Trek Generations in the theater. That's what I remember from being 4 years old.
Dropped a bit of ice cream on the ground and it was over. I'm kidding.
And then I suppose, although you could say I've been a committed atheist probably since my early 20s. Like if you were to ask me when I was a kid, do you believe in God? The answer would be no, but I wouldn't have been able to give you a very good reason why not. Then it just didn't seem to make sense. And I've been a committed Buddhist since, I don't know, my early to mid 20s. That's interesting. Both of those I wrote at a similar time. Well, Buddhism later.
I wonder if Buddhism became attracted to him because there is still something spiritual he recognizes about himself as a human being, because straight up atheism, straight up materialism, I think people eventually get tired of it, in the sense of like, you have been known to lurk from time to time. Yes, that is true. I did kind of peek over at BS's stream and I saw you in there, which I'm sure I would. Yeah, you have to ask, are you allowed in there? Oh, you are very allowed in there. The question is, who else would be allowed in there? Who else? Pretty much everybody, I'm sure. But what I'm getting at with this is that it's interesting how you got, and you see this with feminism too. If you look at, I don't know if it was Mother Jones or different other feminist outlets, there's a lot of feminists who are turning to witchcraft. The straight up materialism just wasn't doing the fix for them. So, and the same thing with Satanism. If I remember, there was a video with Genetically Modified Skeptic, and he was saying, as he was going to a Satanist convention, are there any straight people here? I get tired of atheism the same way I get tired of the sky being blue. Sure, it'd be cool if it were green, but it simply isn't. All right. That would not be a call to just so story, I suppose, in atheism.
Later than atheism.
Right. I weren't considering age 4 to age 20.
I think the
time there's probably some pattern you're getting at, which I won't pry into, but there's probably some pattern you're kind of discovering there.
When I was a kid, in relation to truth. I mean, there was a pattern. I don't mind describing it. I just, as long as we don't do the whole sympathy thing.
Bring out the violins, everybody.
When I was a child, for reasons that I won't go into, I had
I'm not trying to be mean. I'm just trying to have a show.
Behavioral pattern in which I would steal food from the kitchen, because the mouth is the main pleasure center of a young child. And then and
the mitochondria is the powerhouse of the cell.
Was asked about it, I would lie about stealing the food, and then a whole bunch of ugliness ensued. So I learned, I have a kind of almost a pathological relationship to truthful statements, in the sense of making sure that what I say is
Aiden, are you going to swat me next? Is that what the deal is? Is that what the deal is now? Get on the ground. Just try and have a show. You ever see the movie Talk Radio, Aiden?
Accurate. Which isn't a virtue. People often mistake it for, they'll hear me be honest about something and mistake that for a virtue, but it's not. It's a survival response.
Lawyers do that all the time.
Do what?
You should see the movie Talk Radio. I think you'd like it.
Make sure that what they say is accurate, regardless of how they make it seem relevant when it's not relevant, or if it just narrowly escapes them from some conclusion that they don't want to have, even though they probably should. Like, say they're in a courtroom and they say true statements, but the true statements
Right.
are meant to paint a picture of answering the question when they're not.
Yeah, that's not really what I'm talking about, but yeah.
Right, but you were differentiating being honest from being accurate, which is not the same.
If you watch our first debate between me and Shiva, one of the first things we parse out is I asked him, what is a lie? And he said, anything that does not reflect reality. And I said, well, no, that's an untruth. That doesn't have anything to do with the intent to deceive. And then so he conceded that that was part of the recipe of what a lie was. It's different. So, for example, if you had a calculator, which is not a moral agent, and we suppose that the calculator gave me a wrong answer, then is the calculator lying? The answer is no.
Same thing.
Well, I think
You have to be a moral agent.
That's what I was
that being
trying to
accurate is part of being honest. I mean, maybe like if you're talking about honesty, I mean, there's kind of being factually honest, and I suppose there's being how emotionally authentic. Yeah.
Anyway, I interrupted. Go ahead. I thought it was helping, but I was hurting, objectively.
Were you? Hey, Robert. I mean, yeah. Did you want to carry on listening to?
Apparently not. Apparently not. But we'll move on. Now, Aiden is gone, so he is not going to know until he comes back that I'm actually going to be covering this stream. And this stream, we talk about a little bit about objective morality, a little bit about democracy, a little bit about science. Here it goes.
Yeah, let me
Right, but
respond to that.
I think that the thing that's being posited in the topic is Christianity inherently scientific. I may be wrong about this, but why would you talk about Christianity inherently being scientific rather than religion or monotheism or even the Abrahamic religions being inherently scientific, unless you were trying to inherently denote that Christianity is uniquely scientific?
Well, that might depend on the atheist if he wants to posit that Christianity is uniquely unscientific in light of any other world system. Go ahead.
Let me
I
know.
don't think it's uniquely scientific or unscientific.
Whoa. These rooms, man. These rooms can get really noisy.
I have a response.
I get it.
Guys, one at a time, please.
Well, to me, that just sounds like a category error. It's like saying,
Okay,
is
so-
a cuisine
Let's let
scientific?
Jamie talk, though. Let's let Jamie talk.
So the question I posed in response to what someone had said was that, is Christianity inherently scientific? And I said, historically speaking. Then somebody brought up Islam. I think it was Aiden. I was just like, well, it could be, but that wasn't the question. It's not like
About Islam.
right. So I would say to be fair, like
So the prompt was about, is Christianity scientific? Which, of course, you always have to ask what that means, because usually scientific, people say that, and what they mean is the scientific method has been used to establish or give credit to the idea of an idea, or rather of a theory or a hypothesis, or whatever stage of development this is at. An idea is at, and they would test it by natural means. So Christianity being scientific, obviously, is not a very precise prompt for a debate to go on, but they were referring to a past debate that somebody else was having.
ought to be because of its, I would say Islam is largely has a lot of things that it inherited from Christian thinking, and then it depends on
And
what you
Jewish
think
thinking,
about.
yep.
Right. So like
So you
so
So you
I
mean
think the
science
point-
as it exists out external to the scientific method is what you're saying. You're saying
I think what-
science.
what-
What
external
he's
to the
saying is, as a
scientific method.
consequence of Christianity being scientific, Islam would be scientific by extension, is what he's getting at. And the reason Islam would be scientific by extension, if by scientific we mean we are saying that the propositions of Christianity, Judaism, and Islam are because they share the same fundamental scriptures, namely the Torah, the writings and the prophets, and parts of the New Testament, at least in the case of Islam, but of course the full New Testament in the case of Christianity, that it would be in line with what science is, and that part does not change, and in fact enlightens us about the natural world. I think that's what is meant by Jamie in this case when he's talking about it being scientific.
Okay,
Yeah.
as long as the supposition isn't that Christianity is uniquely scientific, then I could agree with that.
Right. That's why you got to phrase the prompt precisely like a lawyer and not like the way it was, which is Christianity scientific, which again is about as loose as applesauce.
Yeah,
We go back to the
Yeah, and I think
because
when
the
you
real
talk about-
question, I think the real question it's just trying to ask is Christianity violating science?
Well, no, let's let Jamie talk about it because he came on to
Yeah,
talk
it-
about it.
Yeah, it could. I mean, it has in certain contexts, just like Islam. So I'm not just blindly defending Christianity, but I would just say, historically speaking. So you could ask something like, I would say certain versions of Christianity are can be inherently unscientific. And
Like Mormonism.
I'm like,
Well, if you want to call Christian Science, which I would call a cult Christianity, then sure you could do that. But yeah, that would not count. If you want to say like Mormonism is I don't know. I don't know about Mormonism specifically in terms of scientific claims. I think it's been proven that the Native Americans are not Jewish people, like like it's been taught that they were the Israelites. So there are different things like that. I don't know about Jehovah's Witnesses. I think Jehovah's Witnesses have something about blood transfusions that I might be. I have to look that up about Jehovah's Witnesses. Blood transfusions. I think they have some kind of. Yeah. So Jehovah's Witnesses, according to Google AI, refuse allogenic blood transfusions, blood from others, based on a religious interpretation of the Bible, which they believe forbids consuming blood. While they reject transfusions of red cells, white cells, platelets, and plasma, many accept as a personal decision medical procedures that use their own blood or minor blood fractions. Okay. Yeah, that's still not ingesting, but whatever.
I'm a young Earth creationist. I would just say, I have certain views about, anthropology too.
And I guess that's not a view about science per se, but it's definitely a view about sin. And I don't see that as the same thing as, making a science claim necessarily. It's just making a moral claim.
That I think is probably more in line with scientific reality than what a lot of Christians believe. But my whole point was like historically, because I think proper Christianity understood properly, the proper understanding of sort of, God's law would come to play heavily on this, and Christianity has largely departed from making an emphasis on that.
He was a Catholic, and he was leaning real heavily on the Catholic sciences.
Well, I mean, most of the church was quote unquote Catholic during the time before the Industrial Revolution, which, but like the principles of Christianity were helpful to, developing, learning institutions and things like that. It's not that.
Well, obviously, yeah, any school of thought can develop a learning institution. It tends to be more the religious ones, especially during the medieval ages. The Roman Empire fell and Christianity spread throughout the Roman Empire. And then there was church and state and monarchies and monks. And it's usually the religious institutions that were the hospitals. It's usually the religious institutions that were the schools. And they carried on the libraries, the annals, all that knowledge was done through the church at that time. What other apparatus would have done it? I'm actually not sure. Could have been the state, but it just, I don't know. For whatever reason, it seemed to be the churches, and whatever the rationale would be, whether it's like keeping laws together, keeping things in line, keeping people in check. I don't know what the rationale would be, but it would be cool to research that, find that out.
It's not possible to for those things to develop without Christianity. It's just a historic fact
was
that.
brought up. And
No, but when the atheists ask that question, I think they're more talking about like the mythology in the same way they would say, "Is Spider-Man scientific?" So they're not asking about the influence it had, but
Spider-Man argument number one.
more about the the
Well,
events
and,
happening.
and re-examination point is it's like, well, we believe in supernaturalism, which is above what's natural. So like,
Well,
you
not
can't
just
really
that.
Above,
study
it's
Well,
not
not-
above.
Not
it's-
just that,
it's
though.
outside, whatever.
completely external.
When you say completely external, it is true that it subsists outside of nature. I believe that supernatural interacts with nature. It depends on what you mean by completely external. If you don't, Aiden, if you don't like the The stream, Jim Bob will show up as your sleep paralysis demon at 3:47 a.m. Jim Bob isn't real. Jim Bob can't hurt me. Thirsty little goblins. That's Jim Bob waking up in the middle of the night thinking about the comment section. Where are you, re-examination? Little goblin, thirsty little gibbons. That's another thing he would say. Well, well, okay. Outside of that, to say is Spider-Man scientific? Well, Spider-Man is not a transcendental claim. I need to hang all of my guitars on the wall in order to even look like I have the Jim Bob setup going on. And it's not positive. Spider-Man is a contingent person that could or could not exist in New York, in our imagination, right? So that's not even the Christian worldview says that everything is founded on a supernatural foundation, whereas a more atheistic worldview, typically the naturalistic kind, except for Shiva's would I don't even know what Shiva would say the world is made of, or is comprised of, or comes from, or subsists upon. Is that everything is built on a material or physical law sort of foundation, absent of a god or anything like that. Is that fair to everybody here?
Well, here's the thing.
For the most part.
Well, here's the thing. The moment you guys said,
and don't forget to share and like the stream and subscribe, everybody.
Like Jesus Christ is God. Well, Jesus Christ is just like a Superman Jew. So now this becomes the Spider.
Jesus Christ is not Superman Jew. Jesus Christ is not Spider-Man. Jesus Christ is very God, transcendent, come in the flesh to die in our place for our sins that we committed. So if anyone trusts in him and so as to leave their sin, they will be changed and God will save them from their sin, not just from hell, but from their sin. They're saved from hell as a consequence from being saved from their sin. But Jesus is not posited as some kind of superhero. Jesus is very God of very God. Spider-Man can die. The world can exist without Spider-Man. The world can't exist without God.
So now this critique to the Christian does become a bit valid.
Let me jump in here.
Yeah, go ahead, Big Bad Mama. Go ahead.
So creationism and the conclusions that you get from creationism do not follow the scientific method. So in no way are they scientific, because
I think origins, like the origins of the universe, the origins of matter, the origins of the laws of physics, those aren't subject to study. Those aren't subject to repetition and experimentation and isolation of factors. It's just totally different. The scientific method is reliant upon those things. It is a result of those things existing. It is not. So yeah, anybody who wants to say, creation science is an interesting term that is not exactly precise to what's going on with creationists. I once made the joke, I said I sold my body to creation science.
Starting with your conclusions, and of course creationists then try to fit their pseudoscience to the conclusions that they've made based on the Bible. So in no way are any of the Abrahamic religions scientific, I would say.
Well, by scientific you mean naturalistic, and you can see it's like a 60-car pileup trying to get on top of that next statement.
One at a time. One at a time.
I gotta respond to that.
Absolute goat rodeo.
We just do this debate next, and then go back to the jail thing, and then give people a chance to actually watch that debate before you tear it apart and talk about it?
Sure. Can I just say one thing in response to that real quick? And then
let Jamie go first, and then you can go.
Yeah, sure. Go.
Yeah, I have to go. I would just point out
Jamie, one of these days you got to stick around for the full thing.
Some of the foundational pioneers of science, like Maxwell or Isaac Newton, they were young Earth creationists. So
it's
they did their science despite.
Yeah, so atheists, when they hear that, of course, it's going to be like, well, it's just because it was in the air at that time. You couldn't escape it. The social pressure was there. The stigma against atheism was really hard. So of course, anybody's who's going to want to be a theist is going to be a theist, and it's ubiquitous. It's inescapable, virtually speaking. But at the same time, I would also say that it wasn't a hindrance to finding science. In fact, you could argue probably that it was a basis for the expectation of regularity and beauty and order in the and complexity and creativity in the universe.
So I wasn't done. I wasn't quite done.
Their
I'm not
creationism
saying
wasn't
that
part of their
creationism-
science.
Let him finish.
Right. So I would say that, you know,
Well, if it isn't not, definitely not whatever. If it isn't not, this is why I don't do late night streams. My brain turns into Swiss cheese. And if for those of you watching, she is referring to this comment. Yes, Jim Bob will enter your dreams and eat them like Freddy Krueger. That's how it works. He is the Colorado Dream Gobbler.
pseudoscience would be like claiming, you know, soft tissue of dinosaurs has to be millions of years old, no matter what, because.
Actually, Aiden, I'd like to hear your response to that soft tissue we found, 20 years ago with actual red blood cells and non-fossilized flesh on the T-Rex. What's the standard answer for that from the scientific community?
Because of my
no
faith
matter
in,
what. No matter what. That's actually a very false. That's a false representation. We've never said that it has to be millions of years old. What we say is that the science indicates that it is millions of years old.
No, the
fact that you're trying to sneak it in by saying that we're
The
claiming
science,
it has
he's
to be
saying the
millions
science
of years
itself.
old.
Science being the
I'm
precept.
He's
I'm
referring
saying
to the soft
material
tissue
science
discovery.
that can be.
He's
Yeah,
referring to the
the
soft
material
tissue
science.
discovery.
But the material science doesn't say that it has to be one of the.
Well, hold on. Doesn't the fossil record, so-called, make it so that it has to be millions of years old according to the model of what a fossil record is supposed to indicate?
It's that you're trying to make it out like it's dog.
Because if it doesn't go past a certain layer, or what is named a certain layer when you discover certain species fossilized in a layer, wouldn't that mean that it has to be of a certain age and it could not have been any later? Ooh, Mo rebuttal. Like, share, and sub. It's free, you know. Hey, Mo, you know what else is free? The link in your Discord. The link in your Discord. Come on down. Let's play. What the heck do you even call a game like this? You know.
Dogmatic.
There are
Name that JL. Oh.
other
Trying to make it
evidence
out
that
as though it's a
dinosaurs.
dog.
All right, I gotta
There's
go.
a
I'm
multitude-
driving to parking lot.
There's a multitude of evidence
Jamie.
that dinosaurs are.
For those of you who don't know, Jamie is a guy who only goes on YouTube when he's driving.
Do a runner, Jamie.
Tens and tens
Be careful and stay off the sidewalks.
of millions of years old. And
You
so
can
it's not
literally hear
just
him.
the soft tissue that is used for that. So yeah, what Jamie said there was a non sequitur, I think.
I just want to
was.
remind everyone that all the stuff we know, even the
Take it
Bible,
away,
everything,
Jamie.
it's all made up.
That is not the way to phrase that. That is not the way to phrase that. It takes intelligence to establish a narrative or to establish an account of something, but that doesn't mean it's made up. Made up means if you say everything is made up, that means that everything is fictional, which is not the argument you want to make, especially from a Christian standpoint.
By somebody.
No, it's a non
Just wanted
sequitur,
to-
and I
just
just want
wanted
to
to
say
bring that
that the people,
It is.
that
I mean, yeah.
Isaac Newton, being a Christian, having young Earth creationist views, has just as much to do with his discovery of calculus or gravity, as we understand it, as him being above or below 6 foot tall, or being British as opposed to being French or Spanish.
This just proves I need to watch more or read more about the mindsets of these scientists going into it to see if I can get to their core principles of why they did what they did and what kind of fascinations they had with nature, because that'd be relevant.
Or Dutch. It has nothing to do with
Talking about how I don't read.
the ideas that were being expressed. So when these creationists always want to appeal to authority by saying, oh, look at all these great men that were Christians, as Big Bad Mama pointed out, as in taking...
Would that also work the opposite way around, where, of course, the scientists are atheists because they went to universities where the professors were atheists, or does that not work? Hey, Rick Nell! Welcome to the show.
part in trying to do the scientific method, they, by the nature of the scientific method, have to put their presuppositions aside. They have to.
Okay, so by put their presuppositions aside, do you mean adopt different presuppositions than they did before? What would dethrone their previous presuppositions, especially if you assume that the regularity is the creator itself, that the regularity of the universe in all of its processes does the making of the universe, or is the only thing that consists of and subsists on the universe? Yes, indeed, the bell. Do you hear the bell?
To put the idea that God created the world in 6 days aside. They have to put the idea that God is overseeing all earthly affairs and already has all this understanding aside.
That just sounds like conflating materialism with science, which, you know, I think you can be a Christian and have the scientific method and not have to put aside non-scientific. That's like saying if, you know, you can't have rules of English because they don't follow physics or something like that. It's a completely different type of understanding. It's a completely different type of logic that we're working on. It's not the same way, because if I have to put them aside, it's like you're importing natural causality and the limits of natural causality onto supernatural causality, and saying because there are limits to natural causality, we must also suppose that those limits apply to supernatural causality. You're fitting apples and window curtains, as Pixie might say. Yeah, I totally disagree with that.
Lie to themselves.
I think what happens is, if you look at it, let's say you look at a space rock and you'd be like, well, how do we know how old that space rock is? Well, this is how old it would take. This is how long it would take for these natural processes to produce this space rock in that amount of time. And so because we know that there's no God, then we know that those natural processes took this long to make that space rock within that amount of time. And then
you
fit
age
that
date it,
paradigm.
so you do a direct measurement.
That's the circular reasoning, though. If you say you age date it, you are, again, presupposing that only natural processes made a thing, and that only natural processes gave it that age. The only reason you say you age date it is because you assume that it came from nature. That's assuming what you have yet to prove in the first place. That's the circularity. To say you age date it is to continue the circularity.
Of the age of that space rock.
Also, what
you're
dating the scientific field says that we know that they know there's no God.
You're using
I'm just
half-lives
putting
to
it
date that
backstage.
space rock.
So sorry, I'm just putting that backstage so everyone knows, so people can see y'all's names
Welcome to the show.
and stuff while you're talking.
I thought we were going to finish the video.
Yeah, I didn't mean
no,
to
no,
interrupt the video, but we got drive by. Got drive. I like Jamie, but he does drive by call-ins.
You didn't. It's right here.
Literally.
See? It's right there.
No, he does that all the time, and it's so funny that Jamie wants to continuously talk about. No, but you know what? He wants to make sniping little remarks about me in the side chat and then not address my response to him whatsoever. He's a coward. He's a cowardly person that wants to make sniping little remarks and then not deal with the pushback when he actually makes those remarks. So, hey, whatever.
You should challenge him to Swords of Reason. Mo, let me know if you're coming up or if you're taking it easy tonight. Or perhaps you're doing VK.
I wouldn't have a problem on that. I wouldn't have a problem
Jamie
at
a
all.
chicken burr?
I'll challenge him about immigration since he's so wrong about it.
What?
No, but
Are we going to go back to the jail?
well, I just want to address what reexamination said really quickly and just say that maybe I misheard you, but if I did hear you correctly, nobody that's partaking in the scientific method goes out and makes the definitive statement that there either is or is not a God. They don't know whether or not that's the case. It doesn't factor in.
Okay, well, but when you say it doesn't factor in, then does that also mean that your only established approach to science would be nature? But then if your only established approach to science is nature, and it doesn't presuppose a God, how is it making statements about origins? That's the difference. No, it's not precisely what I'm saying. What I'm saying is, if you start with the I missed so much. Start over. No, you start over. You go back to the beginning of the stream. We're live. We're live and we're late at night. Use the word because it's overused. If you start with the presupposition that only nature is involved in nature and no supernatural thing can happen, then your measurements will only ever reflect that. So to say that we had to set aside God because if we need to,
Got him.
No, we observe natural process.
When I'm on a roll, like Conan O'Brien once said to a guy who did a failed joke, Chopin's on the 88s. You don't jump on his lap and start playing chopsticks. I'm not Chopin. I'm just saying, like, I was on a roll. It's so sad. More violins, please.
processes every day. So
I agree.
All we've observed is natural processes. So we don't conclude that up front. That's just
I would disagree with that too. For example, the fact that let's see a deaf knot, enjoy your research. So let's take education, for example. We're talking about science. We would want to pull our kids out of a school that teaches anti-vax stuff. Right now, I can't speak for everybody in this panel, but I would want to pull my kids out of a school that teaches anti-vax pseudoscience, for example. Why? Because there's a value to right thinking. Why? Because there's a value to and this goes into the infinite regressive value argument that I often use and see how they do against it. And so far, I've yet to find an interesting response, but I'm not saying it's not out there. Human life and the quality of human life. Where does value come from? Where do these attributes that have prescriptive qualities to that come from? Ultimately, that's not a natural phenomenon. That has to be understood, presupposed already. So every single debate you, really quick, every single debate you have with an atheist has to do with you ought to prefer this worldview to that worldview because there is inherent value to believing true things over false things, and there's inherent value to having benefits rather than having what we would not consider benefits. Go ahead, Aiden. And I covered this today with Teriak in his stream because he's going to be having a Swords of Reason debate next Wednesday, I guess this upcoming Wednesday, about atheism. I don't know if it's ruining society. And Teriak has a very interesting point of view. I think I would call him a pagan because I don't even know. Ooh. And welcome to the stage. I don't have any fancy intro, but here he is, the man, the myth, the legend, the pipe smoking smoker of his opposition, Mr. Mo Rebuttal. Welcome to the show.
1 second. You gotta change my audio real quick here.
And just like that, he is gone, ladies and gentlemen. He's got to change his audio, so we will give him a 5 minute. No kidding.
So it's not inherent value as to why I would not want my child.
If anybody who is wondering why B.S. Lewis is saying anti-vax is a person, it's because in one of my exchanges with him, I said truth is a person, that being the Lord Jesus Christ. And welcome back. I almost said Abe. You're not Abe. You're an imposter.
One moment.
Whoop. And just like that.
Child, if I had a hypothetical child going to school teaching anti-vax stuff, there is a material component that is at risk if my child grows up believing something that has been shown through the scientific method to have negative effects on not only themselves, but...
Oh, you couldn't hear me before? Was that the deal?
Yeah, I had to, because this is actually a good test because with my new setup, I don't have everything, how would I put it, like squared away. So this was a good test to stream from my side and then capture this.
Great.
But
I hope
I can only hear it if I put it on my stream because of the way I have to route the audio.
Oh, okay. Are you streaming on your channel too?
I am. Yeah.
Awesome. Everybody, be sure to go like and subscribe Mo Rebuttal's channel and stream. And, hit the bell, do all the things, share, buy some merch, do whatever you got to do. Mo, do you have your own pipeline that you're going to... pipeline is confusing. Do you have your own line of pipes that you're going to be selling from your site pretty soon?
No. Well, actually, that would be cool. Actually, that's a good idea.
Yeah.
You could actually... if you get the right, I think it's briarwood. That's the traditional pipe wood. I think that's, if I'm not mistaken. You can make them yourself.
Briarwood sounds
that would be
painful.
A good idea.
Shapingro is asking if you are the same Mo we had the debate with, and yes, he is. He says, "I know so few people on this side of YouTube." Shapingro is from I would call it the extremely academic side of YouTube. You think that's fair, Shapingro, to put all that sort of reputational pressure on you? I think it is. Put all these expectations on you. So just to catch you up, Mo, I am reviewing Atheism, as you may have seen in the thumbnail, and plus I think I told you ahead of time. And so what this was a panel reviewing actually Andrew Wilson's surprise attack, or surprise, stream where there's a guy named JL, and this is JL Warren. He, according to the missing mod, he had said that he was the final boss of atheism. So that's interesting. But we were reviewing the stream in which he was trash talking Andrew before Breakfast Tacos actually let Andrew on. And I don't think JL even knew that Andrew was going to be on that day. So that was part of the humor of the thing.
Okay.
Shapingro.
Wait, was this the one? I think I might have saw a part of this. Was this the one where he went on there and he was just kind of talking about general, I guess, the things that are going on, and they wanted to keep talking about, God not real though, but he I don't want to have that debate right now, and
yes.
It was kind of back and forth. Yeah. I saw part of this. I didn't see the whole thing.
Yeah, so I could actually link you this stream. I'm actually only going to go over the part where we have debates about purpose. So where we're at in this debate is I began to use the infinite regressive value argument. Have I told you about this before? I probably have.
Maybe not by in the name, but maybe we've discussed it in the actual argument. I'm not sure.
Yeah. Welcome back, Hayden. So the infinite regressive value argument states that whenever you're debating atheists and they want you to make a truth claim or something like that, ultimately what they're saying is some ideas are more valuable than others, objectively speaking. So if you present them Christianity, they'll present you atheism. They will say atheism is objectively preferable to Christianity for the following reasons. And then, so if I say, okay, then what gives atheism value? And they'll give a list of benefits, and I'll say, what gives those benefits value? And then they'll usually go to the well-being of humans' life. And then I'll say, well, what gives the well-being of human life value? And they'll say consciousness or something like that. I'll ask, what gives consciousness value? And what you found is, by the time you're done with this circle around the universe, nothing will have inherent value, and it will be dependent upon something else that actually doesn't confer value to the previous thing. And so you just go around and around. It's an infinite regressive. So my example I gave here is, let's say it was a town, and in the town, people said, we don't want creationism taught in the schools, we want evolution. I would say, okay, let infinite regressive value time. What makes one better? And then go down the line with that. And what you find is, because nothing is objectively valuable, even their claims about believing true things are not necessarily preferable to believing false things. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does. Yeah, and I've seen this argument before where because basically once you, depending on their type, I guess you could say their type of atheism or their whatever they're basing their what they think they're basing moral standards on. Once you do go further and further back and do the reduction, it's well, if it's just space and matter, it's how do you infer meaning or anything or purpose from that, right? But that's what they believe, essentially. It's just oh, we're just chaos. We're just a bunch of particles slamming into each other. It's okay, great, cool story, bro.
Right. If I ever said because chalk dust for my moral argument, you can slap me in the face. Shapingro says, what if I just bite the bullet and say that my infinite regresses to Buddha? Well, here's the thing. Buddha did never ever claim that his writings were divinely inspired. So that's just what Buddha says. How do I know what Buddha says is true? That would be my retort to that. And then it would be the burden of proof would be on the Buddha person to tell me that how he knew that what Buddha says was true. And of course, obviously, the claim itself that your writings are divinely inspired by an inerrant mind, the claim itself is not sufficient, but you have to at least make the claim. Otherwise, it's just what somebody said. So, and the Buddha himself didn't even claim to be God. But go ahead, Mo.
Didn't Buddha also speak favorably on Christianity?
I don't know.
Look this up. I think that there was a claim, their version of it. Christians would say the route to salvation. They would use that verbiage, right? But I think Buddha might have said something to the nature of enlightenment is possible through Christianity or something of that nature. I need to look that up. Actually, I've heard that in passing, but I've never actually looked up the quote.
Okay, so that's an interesting thing you bring up. There was a musician named Keith Green, and Keith Green, he was Jewish. And he rejected Judaism, and he was searching for a while. I don't know if he went to atheism, but he searched all the religions: Hinduism, Buddhism, Christianity, Islam, and all this kind of stuff. And what he said was, The reason I came to Christianity is because every world religion had something to say about Jesus. Every world religion pointed to Jesus and said that he was a good guy or that he was someone to be admired and revered. Everybody gave at least lip service to Jesus. And so he's like, well, why not just go to Jesus directly? Toronto Bible Study says, welcome to the chat. Buddha predated Christianity by many hundreds of years.
So we're appealed
Yes.
to what was that? There's a fallacy, ageism or something of that nature.
Well,
or?
Toronto Bible Study is a Christian, and him and I have some differences, for sure. But I don't know what his point is with that. I mean, Judaism did too, but Christianity is the fulfillment of Judaism. So if you want to say something went further back, well, I mean, even further back than that is the account from the garden, which we know from the inspired scriptures anyway. Oop.
Okay, so
Oop,
here we go. It wasn't Buddha himself, but there have been people in Buddhism that have, like, I guess, the leaders that have said favorable things about Christianity.
Oh, Buddha said something about Christianity. I'm just pointing out that you are wrong. Oh, okay. I do not.
Well, actually, I said I need to look it up. I wasn't. Yeah. I was like, I wasn't sure. I heard it in passing. I just looked it up and corrected.
I don't hold you to that.
Live in real time.
Yeah. Toronto is an aggressive fact checker here. Shapingro says it's not an appeal, it's a rebuttal to the idea that Buddha could say something about Christianity. So it is anachronistic. It is anachronistic. Good to know.
Got it.
All right.
Society as well by not having a proper immunological response.
I agree with that.
Confronted with these illnesses.
You very quickly assumed it was some sort of fallacy, however. Yes, because I was also anachronistic in my thinking that there was some kind of contemporary Buddha or some Buddha, of course, that came after Christ at some point. I guess I'm just not familiar enough.
I was going off of like his comment that it's older. I didn't. That's what I assumed he was making a comment that it's just older, which there's no argument there. Like if you, actually, I don't know when Buddhism was codified. I'd have to look that up. I'm not even really sure.
Yeah. Yep. Could have been not too long after the flood, like maybe like 4,000 years ago. Who knows? I don't know. I need to look it up, but I'm not on Buddhism tonight. Although one day, you're right.
I need to go talk to Shiva about this.
Buddhism actually came 6,000 years ago. Okay, something like that. I can't do Buddha. He's got two Buddha, Shiva. I gotta get my pagan gods right. He's got too epic a voice. I told him that if I write a novel, I want him being the reader on the audiobook. Alicia, Speakeasy's wife, says sometimes that P versus not P.
Oh, it was the Dalai Lama that praised Jesus Christ.
Okay.
Yeah.
So he's the understudy. The understudy. Is the Dalai Lama basically just the Pope of Buddhism?
I'm not sure. Maybe.
I don't know how that works. Either.
He doesn't. I don't think he has the cool hat
or the car or Vatican City.
No. Or yeah. But other than that, they're exactly alike.
Right. Dalai Lama's from Chicago, just like the Pope.
Yeah. Other than all the things you listed there, they're very similar. You could mix them up very easily.
Shapingro has a message for you.
Oh, please tell Mo I'm a dick, but hopefully I'm a lovable dick. Understandable.
Awkward phraseology. Dalai Lama is the leader of Tibetan Buddhism. Mm-hmm. I agree with
my response is that while teaching evolution in schools over 6-day creation, I believe that is also a case where we have to look at things based on the science as well.
Yeah,
where the science.
So what's okay? So then you've made value claims as far as like believing true things over false things and having a longer life with less pain or so, and as opposed to a shorter life with more pain or whatever you want to call it. So now we've had value claims. So where do those value claims come from?
The value claims come from the fact that I am a member of a social species with empathy. I have a mind.
Now, Mo, I think you have some things to say about empathy, don't you?
Yeah, it's fake and gay. It doesn't exist.
but sympathy does.
Sympathy does, yes. Empathy, if you look at so I've actually refined this argument a little bit, but more since last time I've had to debate it. But I before I would go down the history of where empathy came from, and it is a good thing to note, but it's also not like the best argument for why it's pretty much non-existent or not really real. Basically, my current argument follows that if you look at psychology and empathy and how they use it and how they implement it, it's always used as a weapon to make some sort of moral grandstanding. It's also used to justify a lot of like horrific things, like affirming transformer people. I got to remember, TOS. I got to be careful, but
the things you can't say that are just like the things that must be said. Yeah. It's like it's not even offensive. It's common vernacular, and we're trying to censor it. It's like the Jays. Yeah. I feel like it's more offensive to call them the Jays than what they really are. But anyway.
Yeah. But
yeah, Transformers.
Yeah. So Transformers. Yeah. So then, my current argument that I like to play around with, because me and Nimit were talking about this, is that you basically just grant it. Like, okay, empathy is real. Okay, well then, I guess I'm a woman, and you have to empathize with me. And then ask them what's wrong with that, and they're like, well, no, what's wrong with that? Why am I not? No. Well, I know what it feels like to be a woman. Because that's what empathy is, right?
Because you can empathize with something that you're not, with someone who you're not.
Yeah, I don't have a reference for it, but that doesn't matter, right? Yeah. Like, well, what's wrong with that? So that's the current attack angle. But yeah, also another thing too, empathy. You ever notice how all these like leftist guys they use empathy to beat you over the head with it? Has empathy ever been referred to as a bad thing? It's never a bad thing. It's always like, if you don't have it, then you're a bad person. You're just a big meanie. You have no love in your heart.
I think only the right talks about toxic empathy, which is just like a weaponized version of psychological manipulation, where somebody is put under false guilt so as to manipulate them into a certain set of actions.
Correct. And that's why I'm kind of waging this war on it, because I think it's one more tool we can strip from these left-wing nut jobs, right? Like, why grant it to them? Why even go into why grant this to them, this weapon? Like, because you're already on the defense when they come into it. They're like, you have to prove you have empathy. Like, no, we're not doing this anymore.
Mo, what is a CX? I don't understand what's going on here.
CX.
Yeah, you see that from the comment from Shapingro?
Context?
All those, I don't know. I'm sorry, Shapingro. You're too mathematical for me. But he does say, but they're not really asking for empathy. They're specifically asking for sympathy. They want you to feel bad for them not understand their plight. They care more about the oppression points. And Toronto Bible Study says empathy has no objective basis. Some people empathize with unborn babies. Others do not. There's no way to universalize empathy. I would wonder what it would feel like if you could have empathy to put your hand on the baby belly and then feel like what it is to be a baby in that belly, knowing nothing.
So yeah, that's actually he has a good point there, right? Like, you don't have a way to measure this. It's not like anything you can really measure any kind of way. It's just this nebulous thing that they use and they throw around, and you're supposed to have it. If you don't, then you're the bad guy. Right. But also, it comes from a bunch of quack jobs who wanted to pretend to be inanimate objects. So that's another story. But that's where it came from, the original word.
Oh, that's creepy as heck. But yeah, so in this case, he would say Aiden is saying we get value derived from being communal creatures that have empathy and all this kind of stuff. And again, I think that the trap door opens right underneath that.
That as a component of its social existence, as a mind whose existence is predicated on a mutually beneficial survival, as through the nature of being part of that social species.
Okay, and what gives any of that value? Just because it exists doesn't mean it has value, correct?
Yeah, you're deriving
right. It's given. Hey, Bubblegum, am I talking to you right now, or am I talking to reexamination?
Go ahead.
Okay, thank you. Sorry, can you repeat that reexamination?
Yeah, so what gives any of that value? Just because it exists doesn't mean it has value. Doesn't mean it ought to exist. Or that you ought, just because you prefer one experience.
In itself existence in itself does not grant it value. I agree. A rock sitting there on the side of the road is not capable of comprehending its existence and capable of comprehending value. That's where I would prescribe that value. It is within the sapience, the consciousness of me knowing that I am alive, that I am capable.
But if consciousness is just a chemical phenomenon, what gives that value if it was the same exact amount of material? It's just arranged differently, and now because the chemicals are interacting, they're doing different things. How does that magically give value to sapience? That's my question. And you can just keep going back on from there. And I think once you get past consciousness and pre-consciousness, they don't have a whole lot left to hang on to.
Yeah, I've never really seen them, like an atheist, able to argue an actual grounding for why they should care about others or why they should have any kind of moral system that would say this thing is bad. Any moral value judgment, what are they basing that on? Because once again, it just reduces down to, it's just these chemical reactions. Like, so how what's a bad chemical reaction? Is there a true chemical reaction? Is there a bad chemical reaction? So I'm just arguing with you. My chemical reaction is arguing with your chemical reactions. What's to say mine are bad and yours is good?
Yeah, and that's why I'm like, when I talk to people about this, I say, can a rock fall to the ground incorrectly? And so they think about it because it's a category error. And then so likewise, if minds are only reactionary things within a universe of matter that just does the course of what matter does anyway, because they have fixed determined outcomes from the math of what nature is and what physics is, then how can you say that someone is thinking incorrectly if thoughts are neither correct or incorrect because they are determined by the physics and the neurons that are going to fire in a certain direction no matter what anyway? Shapingo asked,
definitely
go ahead,
that connection.
Please.
I was just gonna say you could definitely make that connection where you just live in their world, right? It's like, okay, well, if it's all just this crazy chemical matter, then what is, like you said, like how you compared to rock and they would say that's category error, but it's like, well, that's just another thing that exists in reality. It's like this physical matter, which you're claiming all people are anyway. There's nothing special about them from one to the other. So why shouldn't we just go bring back the old Aztec route, Like, just sacrifice a bunch of people. There's really no, maybe ripping hearts out will get us some benefit. Have we tried it recently? We might get better crops. Who knows? Yeah, we might get better crops. Who knows, man?
Japingo asks, can there be such a thing as instrumental value in line with the idea of instrumental goals? I think of value as something that is an immaterial reality that validates something, like validates a course of action, and there's like moral prescriptive approval.
So I can read these.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, I need to. So I'm like figuring out how to best work this. So don't mind me. Here we go. I got
the exploratory question I have here is, if your goal is, I don't know if you have the category for this, Shapingro, in your assortment of ideas, but if the goal is in itself immoral, what does the instrumental value mean to me? If your goal is to like take out a conservative campus speaker or something like that, would that, just because you had efficient means to achieve your goal, would that mean that there was some kind of value to it? I think that you're using the word value to mean utility. That's how it comes across to me. So that's the problem I would have with that.
Attributing that value not only to myself, but anthropomorphizing insofar as ascribing that value onto other things as well. So the value comes as a basis of the mental faculties that I've been provided to myself via sapience.
So what gives those mental faculties value? It feels like an infinite regress of this has value because something that prerequisites it. And
no, it has value. It has value specifically because it gives itself the capacity to be able to prescribe said value. I agree that the value.
So it thinks it has value, therefore it does have value, is kind of what I heard there. Is that what you heard, Mo, or what's your assessment of that?
That's what it sounded like to me. Sorry, I'm like getting things squared away here. Oh, by the way, my side. Hey, Potato, good to see you, buddy. Thanks for coming by.
That will never not be a funny
yes,
phrase. Hey, Potato.
that's what it is. The Potato, man. What can
Potato
I
has
say?
sapience.
That's who he is. Yeah. But that I was trying to follow what he said, where he would put the endpoint of where he's making the value judgment, but it sounded like he was just we're sapiens, so I'm not really sure what he means by that. We're sapiens.
We have
so
intelligence.
Therefore, we have value. Oh, so we have intelligence. Okay, so then, okay, well then the question is, okay, what level of intelligence? Where's the line that you cross of intelligence that gives you value, right?
Maybe what if he says any at all? What if it was like even like a sea sponge? Yeah, any at all.
Okay, well then dolphins are just as valuable as humans then in his eye. Congratulations.
And of course, that would bring into maybe he does. Yeah, maybe he. If you don't if you use a sliding scale, then you put certain humans in danger, and if you don't use a sliding scale, then you put us and a mosquito on the same plane, and that's obviously absurd.
Right. You have problems at both ends.
Right.
Value itself does not have an objective sort of value. I don't think that there is an objective value to my life.
So it comes down to opinions. Basically, which again should be irrelevant, because if my opinion is irrelevant because I'm a creationist, I'm a 6-day creationist, and then I don't know. Again, I think the infinite regress of value kind of proves its own legitimacy when it comes down to it. Because if you say your thoughts are results of your ancestors, and you say that your thoughts are no better than anybody else's, but you get value from your own thoughts of yourself, like, is anything falsifiable? Is anything checkable by any standard? It seems clear to me that's not. We actually get into democracy later on, and so I might want to pick your brain on this.
Life that could be quantified on some scale and compared to somebody else's life.
Okay, but then how do you evaluate what is, when it comes to, like, I don't know how you can reconcile what you just said with why you wouldn't want beneficial education versus the other one. And obviously, when I say beneficial, I am presupposing some kind of value to human life and well-being and things like that. So we come up against this bedrock of, in every single debate, both the Christian and the atheist believe in some kind of objective value, whether they think so or not. I know that's
subjective.
I know that you disagree. I know that that's part and parcel of the atheistic world. If it's not objective, why should the creationist feel shame for wanting to teach creationism in schools? Like, if it's not objective, that's the problem. They have to protect themselves on both ends, because they can't say anything is objective, because then they have to justify that
define
claim.
what you have to explain what objective means and how they're getting to that point for any kind of claim.
By the way, Mo, on my end, you look like a profile, what do you call it, prison photo, because you got the black and white. We're seeing you from the side, and you're not moving.
Oh no!
At least I don't see
issues. I've been having issues with my camera recently, so it might come back. You can still hear me, then, right?
Oh, I can still hear you. Yeah, that's no problem.
Yeah, well,
it's just you look like your last known photo. That's all.
Yeah, have you seen this man? He was last saw berating someone online.
Milk carton rebuttal. View that you disagree that's objective, but otherwise, why do you vote? Why do you vote? Why do you speak out against things that you think are lies? Why do you think that things are wrong? But it's not actually binding. It's not. I mean,
wait a minute. What's this false dichotomy of saying that something, in order for something to have value, it has to be objective? Why? What's this?
Mo, are you still with us?
Yeah, I'm still here. I'm trying to get my camera working
again. When we're talking about human life and whether or not life has to be objectively valuable, this goes back to actually a little bit of our debate, where I was saying that if you're going to propose a law, like say it was a pro-life law, and I'm not trying to start the debate over again, right? We already did that. But if I'm saying, like, if I wanted to say this is an injustice, we should have a law against it. When I say should, I mean objectively, morally speaking, we should have a law that protects the unborn from being unalived. And so that's what I'm trying to get through to Aiden. Whereas he might say that this is horrible with all these pregnant women. You know, I hate to straw man Aiden, but that's just how this is how it comes across to me in terms of the pro-choice movement. But it's like, this is horrible. All these pregnant women who didn't want to be pregnant, so we have to be able to unalive the unborn. You know, and it's like, well, one of us is right and one of us is wrong, right? And then he'd be forced to say yes. So if one of us is wrong and one of us is right, then that's objective because it's not stance dependent. It's something that his side is right if they're right and my side is wrong if they're right, or the reverse. My side is right and their side is wrong. So to get defensive and say, well, it's a false dichotomy. Where is this middle that we're trying to find between the two? It feels like an excluded middle kind of problem to me. I'm trying to understand your emoji symbology, Shapingro, and maybe you need to be the pioneer of emoji math because it's just not clicking together for me. If regular math is not going to click for me, then this hieroglyphic cyber emoji proof formula is not going to do it for me either. Lo siento. Shapingro.
This false dichotomy of saying that in order for...
Oh, go ahead, Mo.
I was just going to say in the future, that's how everyone will just talk to each other with just emoji symbols. Just
that's how it was.
We're going to revert to the Egyptian method of things and communication.
Well, yeah, it also reminds me of when you learn about the Middle Ages in history class and you say, well, the butcher, they had a wooden outlining of a pig shape that hung on a signpost. And that, that's how you knew where the butcher was. Or if you wanted to know where the blacksmith was, you would look for the wooden figure like an anvil. And that would tell you who the blacksmith was. Because you can't read. Está bien, niño. What does Terry say? Vi favore. I don't even know what word he says. He's close.
Vi favore. Vi favore.
Yeah. He's closer to Italy than me, so he can do it. But he's still Irish.
Yeah, it looks like water with straw plus beer equals
Lego head man. Is that a dog? Is that a man? Is that a polygon? Nobody knows.
I don't know.
Something, yeah, like I think I already adequately put it. I don't have to repeat it.
So it would be what? It would not be objective, therefore our assessment of value would be delusional, or what? Because if it's not delusional, is it real?
Subjectivity is not inherently delusion.
I
think that's kind of a pretty loaded term.
The fact that we're having
delusion,
but the fact that
delusion and subjectivity are inherently synonymous is a bit dishonest.
I didn't say that. I didn't say. Hey, you're going a little too far. I did not say that subjectivity is an illusion. What I'm saying is, if somebody has the idea of objective value, like somebody has inherent value, and they're living as if that is prescriptive. For example, let's say somebody is trying to kidnap a kid and you're witnessing it, you'd knock those guys' lights out. I don't know if that's going to take off a TOS or whatever, but you knock those guys' lights off because you have made a value judgment, and that gives you what you didn't have before. I think that was like 5 or 6 rights, which was a moral pass to take such action. Whereas when he's just picking up juicy fruit in the aisle, that you didn't knock him out then.
Right, but re-examination, you're kind of helping to make my point right now, because while I would make the decision to go knock that guy's lights out, Joe Lunchbox down the road might not make that same decision.
Now, Mo, can you explain to me how that proves subjective morality as opposed to objective morality?
It's his preference. His preference.
Is there a Steelman version of that, or not really?
I don't know how to Steelman my preference.
Yeah, I don't know either. Because my point was that the people doing the kidnapping are bad people, and they have made a choice. And you are trying to prevent the kidnapping. You are trying to thwart the kidnapping, and you have also made a choice. Are those two choices of equal value? And what I'm basically hearing is yes. That's what I'm basically hearing. So I don't know what this yes is to, but I will adopt it as my own.
Joe
Doesn't make
Lunchbox
sense.
down the
But you're
road
saying
might
Joe
be the
Lunchbox
determination. Hold
is
on, let me
wrong.
finish. Let me
I feel bad for Joe Lunchbox.
finish. Joe Lunchbox
Try this.
might make the
Aha, low rebuttal. Cyber cop.
Yeah, we'll do.
Coming to a
just do
theater near
this.
you.
We'll just do this. Fine.
choice
This is all fine.
that according
whatever.
to my
This is all fine.
value
That's my preference now.
that according to my value system and my priorities that I have given to me, I don't want to go knock that guy's lights out because it's going to put me at risk. I just don't want to get involved, right?
What you made is a value judgment of somebody's being victimized. Victimized is a moral claim, and so you wanted to prevent that and execute defense, maybe a bit of justice. You have a justification for your actions. Between subject, hold on. I stopped for you.
No, you're right. I apologize.
Between people who have subjective experiences, but having a subjective experience is inevitable for us limited creatures, for sure. But what I'm saying is, just because we have subjective experiences of only being ourselves, it does not mean that our value claims, which press us to use force, shall we say, like either of state or of self-defense or defense of others, that now we're talking about something that binds all of us and not just something that is purely subjective. Now we're making a transcendental claim to say, well, it's my subjective moral. Well, subjective moral is almost like a contradiction in terms, because if it's only prescriptive to you, then what changed about your behavior to vote, to make laws, to suppress other people's actions in the first place? Go ahead. You see what I'm saying there? It's like,
yeah. Well, yeah. It's if you're basing it all on just like preference and then your subjective idea of what morality is, then you really don't have any way or any ground to stand on if another group comes and says, well, this is our preference and this is what we prefer, and we're going to do horrible things to you.
Right.
How do you make the determination? Like, what are you using to say the moral ought in either scenario?
Right. Especially if you... The great and wonderful Mo. Oh, by the way,
how about that?
Here's one version of Rex. If you wanted to see a Rex, there's a Rex for you.
Hey, I'm glad you are embracing the new nickname. That's fantastic.
Yeah, I mean, I just figured since I figured since you're doing Avatar mode, I could do a little bit of Avatar mode, you know. But yeah, there's one version. There are other versions of it too, but just wanted to show that.
Oh, that's a good one.
I'm sorry. Can you finish that last statement?
Yeah. So
again?
if you're going to say everything is subjective, why vote? Because voting is to overrule other people's subjective moral takes. Go ahead.
Right. So my subjectivity does not inherently mean that everyone else's subjectivity that exists out there, while is being valid, right? Their subjective opinions are perfectly valid, and mine.
How do you know they're valid?
And is not inherently better than other people's.
How can you say that? How can you say, okay, if you believe that the theory of evolution ought to be taught in schools and anything about creationism is bunk, and being bunk should not be taught to your children or anybody else's children, really, then how can you say that yours is not better than everybody else's? I mean, I remember one time a guy told me, well, you think your music is better than other people's. And I said, you don't think your music is better than mine? And then he had to back off because obviously it's like, it's a two-way street, sir. So the two-way street also has to do with subjective morals. So if you believe that morals are subjective and you also believe in equality within your subjective moral framework, it forces you to believe that all subjective morals are equal, which is absurd.
Yeah.
So.
I'd like to hear like him go into his argument more. Like I don't.
Sure.
And what I mean by that is like not that I'm not making a claim here or about playing. I mean what I mean is I want to like hear him kind of like really get to the justification, because so far he's saying he is, but I haven't really heard anything that really grounds it, if that makes sense, or how it doesn't just go into the infinite reduction.
Yeah. Shapingra, do you have a microphone? Answer that in the chat. If your microphone is up and running, hey Aiden, we're going over our back and forth we had about subjective versus objective and democracy. Shapingro, do you have a microphone that you can tell us the category we're making? And that would be fascinating. And then maybe I could have you pop up in the Discord and you can make your debut.
Is precisely the reason why I think in a subjective system, voting makes a lot more sense than an objective one. Because if it...
Oh, by the way, here's Rex, Aiden. If you haven't seen him before, this is the Rex in question.
I saw I briefly popped over to VK and I saw Rev was on there too, by the way.
I know. He just
Yeah.
it's
Came back
good
from
to
the
see
dead.
him. Yeah, he just and is that his wife?
I have no idea.
Somebody joked that was his wife. That doesn't look like the preacher's wife profile picture though. Because she does have a profile and she was in the chat. Some nights he was in the chat. So I guess his computer is working now. It's interesting. I thought I would have got that memo.
Maybe you got a new one.
I would have got that memo. Call me a wuss. I deserve it. You're not a wuss.
Call me a wuss.
You are just a picador who is throwing spears from the chat.
Indeed, this is
It's
objective.
I volunteer this one for tribute. I name my champion. Send him forth. Go.
Yeah. I volunteer my sibling for tribute out of the kindness of my heart, my generosity.
And things are either objectively correct or incorrect. The people that would be voting one way or another would be voting not only against something that is predicated against their personal beliefs, they're voting against something that is somehow inherently against a wider moral fabric that exists external not only to you as an individual, not only to your society, but something external to the entirety of the human race. And I don't think that that's the case. I think the fact that we are able to sit here and talk about one particular system of expressing representation, that being voting, that exists within a tapestry of other societies that dealt with that representation in a myriad of other different ways and experiences, goes to show that it is in fact not objective. Because if my subjective ability to go and vote and decide whether or not a particular candidate or a particular policy is in keeping with what I believe to be the case, what I believe to be the right and moral action, that is a lot more in keeping with a subjective moral system when put into the context of what I just described earlier, compared to an objective reality. Because
here's why it's not, though. So before past me gets into that, it seems like what he was saying is because we live in systems where there are subjective opinions on what morality is, that would only make more sense in a reality where morality itself is subjective and not objective. What do you think of that?
Yeah. Well, listening to him explain that bit right there, I mean, it was just a long-winded way of saying, like a bunch of people collectively vote on what they think is best. Now, whether you you would have, there's no real way to drill down to okay, to every single person and say, okay, what are they basing this on? Is it some moral ought, or do they even have a way to justify those claims? So he's just describing voting and how it's in a lot of ways, actually, he's making a really good case as to why democracy is kind of not that great of a thing, honestly.
Yeah, direct democracy is not good. I think the representational buffer zone we have is a good medium between the two because it keeps both sides accountable, the government itself and the people themselves. Now, Shapingra, I know you don't like me bringing up chats, but I didn't mean it in a mean way, Shapingra. Do I come across as really harsh? I think I come across as really harsh when I talk, Mo. He says, "Hey, now don't complain about chatters." I'm not complaining. I'm not complaining. I'm just teasing you. Chatters are good for metrics, and you know all too well that trying to make an argument from chat is dog poo poo. That is 100% true, which is why I am appreciative of your offer. Yes, yeah. I think they should add to torture at Guantanamo Bay. having to debate somebody while you're in the chat and they have a microphone.
They have a microphone, yeah. And you're trying to use nuance, and they're just like every mistype, every slightly wrong word, they're just tearing you apart. And then you have to retype the whole thing over and explain your previous statement because no, that's not what I meant in the context of XYZ. And then, they're just, that would be hell. That would be
I've done it. It is not fun being laughed at, misrepresented, and like being made a spectacle of, so
that's why I usually don't. I try not to debate from chat. Sometimes I can't help myself, but even going back and forth with other people who are chatting, right? And it always it ends in basically the same way. Like I get to the point where I'm just like, hey, this isn't worth my time. Like this is like I'm sitting here like writing these paragraphs and they're responding to the paragraph and I gotta read this. Like this is what am I doing here?
And the worst is when you think you're clear, when you think, okay, I've got a complicated idea, I want to get it right so they understand it.
Yeah,
I think I phrased it just the right way, and then they read it in a slow motion and they tilt their head, huh?
Mm-hmm.
I don't understand what you said. And you're like, no, and then you're like, oh, I wish I would use this other word that means the same thing, but maybe they would have known that other word better. It's just garbage. I got basura. Here's why it's not, because the entire enterprise of voting is a check and balance against corruption in government, which recognizes, number one, that there is such a thing as wrong and right governance, and that number two, that
it's not just corruption against government. No. I need to interrupt. I'm sorry, but I need to interrupt here. That premise is faulty, because if voting was only a check and balance against corruption in government, then the fundamental component of voting as a form of representation would not be there. That is what the primary component.
Say that one more time. What do you think he was getting at when he said that?
I don't know. I need him to clarify on that.
Okay, well, he's going to clarify because I need clarification too. Shapingo's here because Rex is a phenomenally good guy. Wow. While I'm here, I might as well engage and get the metrics up. Yeah, absolutely. I appreciate it. Shapingo is a workhorse of promoting his favorite things. And he's mainly a guy at Ryan Mullally's channel, which is actually queued up for this stream too. Ryan Mullally, I think I told you about the Odinist. That's also queued up, coming up on the show at some point.
Oh, good.
Yeah,
I've always wanted to pick the brain of an Odinist and I don't know, just find out what they're like, like their epistemology is. Like how do they justify all this? Like what is their? It's interesting. I'll be honest though, like a little bit of a Mo lore here. There was a time when I was like going through agnostic, and I was like, I was like this whole like pagan, Viking thing. It's kind of cool. Maybe I could, maybe I could just be spiritual. I
got a spear and a longboat.
Yeah, I could be spiritual with my spear, and it would be, but it was like a passing thought that lasts for like a week or so, and then I was like, no, this is dumb. I can't LARP around as Odin. That feels I'd feel goofy as hell. So
could you imagine?
That didn't. And I actually have like a decent, and I actually do have like bloodlines, like Irish, Scandinavian. I actually do have like, a quasi legitimate reason to, consider it, but no, like I just like, no, I can't do this.
Are you a descendant of Leif Erikson? Is that what you're getting at?
Who?
Leif Erikson. He was one of the.
So.
Okay, he was.
No.
I think I don't know if he was Nordic, but he was some kind of Viking lineage, and he was one of the first people to come to the New World, the Americas.
No. I think if we're getting technical, like, so the Vikings, they made a habit of like going over to like Irish people and kidnapping them and mixing and that whole thing, right? So that's why a lot of Irish people do have like bloodlines from that side. So that's probably what it is.
Man, the Irish, we never got a break. That's for sure. So I think he's going to clarify at this point what he was getting at.
The primary component of voting. I mean, like, okay, we'd have to define what you're referring to as far as voting. Do you mean just the conceptualization of voting in of itself? Do you mean the voting as it takes place on a popular level for a particular political candidate?
I mean voting as opposed to say straight dictatorship or monarchy or things where you have like no rule of law. You don't have a representative system.
Right, that's a form of representation. That's
Correct.
the primary modus
democracy is the
operandi
purest
on
form
which
of
voting
secularism.
operates by. It's a form of representation, not a check and balance against government corruption.
Yes,
Oh,
here I think
Of
I
course it
agree
is,
with
because
Aiden here.
it widens the scope of governance in terms of the people having a say. I'm not saying a pure democracy is good. That's not what I'm
Right.
saying at all. But what I'm
that's
saying
not
is
its primary function.
it is predicated on the fact that people do have rights inherently and do have a say, and that their say, sorry, Mo, and their interests deserve. This was not the reason I invited you on, so we're not going to go there.
No,
to have a voice in.
Wait, what? Go
Oh,
where?
about the whole
I'm listening
rights
to his.
thing.
Oh, rights. Yeah.
Just didn't want to do a tripwire thing there, but I can back it up.
You wanted the trigger? No. That's
Form
fine.
of representation,
I was
not a
listening
check
more
and
to his justification. I'm trying to like dissect what he's saying here.
Sure, I inched back a little bit.
Once against government corruption.
Yes, here I think
Of course
I
it is,
agree with
because
Aiden here.
it widens the scope of governance in terms of the people having a say. I'm not saying a pure democracy is good. That's not what I'm saying at all. But what I'm
that's
saying
not
is
its primary function.
it is predicated on the fact that people do have rights inherently and do have a say, and that their say and their interests deserve to have a voice in the governmental system in the first place.
No.
I feel like we're
it's just being
comparing
sold
apples
the
to
people
window
that
curtains.
way.
All right, the challenge comes from Aiden Linden. Trying to dissect what I said, there's your first mistake. Ha 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 ha. Oh. Solo.
Yeah. So, is that the same guy talking?
That
Aiden?
that is the man in question.
Got it. Okay. It sounds like his argument is that of the voting function in the government is not the primary purpose is not to fight against corruption, but I'm trying to understand what he views it the primary function of it is. That's what I'm trying to get clarification.
I think you're saying the primary function of voting was not to fight corruption, but I think there's more. I think there's more to it than, like, for example, part of government itself is justice. Part of government itself is having order in your society, and not and there are good kings, there are bad kings, there are good magistrates and bad magistrates, there are good laws, there are bad laws, all that kind of stuff. So the question I have is, what purpose does voting serve? And even if you don't believe in voting, or if you don't believe in democracy, at least consider that the lack of voting in or like all these mock votes they have in dictatorships, which are just, for show at the end of the day. Putin got 98% of the vote. Oh, good job, Putin. You ran a stellar campaign. These are made to mimic the idea that they have a say. And even if they were placebos, the placebo tells the people that they have a say and that they are influencing the way that their country works, and that puts them at ease. So even if it was a lie, it still has a noble utility to it.
So I guess the question I would have for that is, do you think that our current voting system gives the populace a say?
I would have to say, because the system itself would be against DJT running, I would have to say that has to be yes. And the fact that Hillary Clinton had to use superdelegates in order to suppress Bernie tells me that the primary system does work, but she would have to corrupt it on another level in order to prevent people from getting what they want that they otherwise would have got if voting were allowed to stand on its own. That's how I see it.
Right. But but even if we're talking about the current voting system in the US, right? Let's say 51% of the population decides that they're going to vote and they're going to legalize, free ABs for everyone, right? The 49%, are they being represented?
Free what for everybody? I'm sorry, I heard ABs.
ABs. I'm trying to be TOS friendly.
I am dumb, so clip that.
The baby deletion.
Oh, okay. Yeah. Fetus deletus. Okay.
Yes, fetus.
Yeah.
Fetus deletus.
Yeah.
It sounds like some bad name for like some Spartan warrior or something. But go ahead.
It's my cyberpunk band. But
yeah, there you go.
Okay, so 51% would get that. That would be an objectively unjust law according to objective morals. So, but what's your point?
My point is the 49% being represented?
No,
Let's say they're all Christians.
No, then their representation is not shown in federal law.
Yeah.
But hold on. If you're talking about like an amendment that would be in the Constitution.
I'm just talking straight our current voting system, the way it works, right? The constitutional republic with a little bit of sprinkling of democracy and a little bit of social programs, all that. It kind of comes down to, the classic example you've heard online is, okay, so an 18-year-old OnlyFans girl can cancel out the vote of a 45-year-old man with 4 kids. Like, to me, that seems.
Oh, you mean in like the electoral college?
Well, just voting in general. Like,
okay, yeah, obviously it's not. Again, no system is perfect, but as opposed to like a dictatorship, or as opposed to a straight aristocracy or monarchy.
Well, what would be the advantage? What would be the advantage over a monarchy if it's a good monarchy?
Well, it's okay. Well, if it's a good monarchy, then again, we'd have to go into what would make it good. But it's a good monarchy, that's great. But it still hinges. It's still. Let's put it this way: people die and they have bad kids, and if the bad kids take over, it's good monarchies are good, bad monarchies are bad. We'll put it that way.
Well, not all monarchies from history automatically gave their the next thing to their blood child. Some did for adoption kids, and that was actually one of you going back to Marcus Aurelius, that was like one of his probably greatest blunders. He actually gave leadership to his kid, which turned to be a complete degenerate instead of the one that he was raising that would have been better. So there is cases that were in history where it doesn't necessarily go to the bloodline.
It can go to wherever. The bloodline isn't so relevant, but I mean, I just gave that as an example. But you're right. But it still goes to somebody else who is not the previous king. You look at Israel, right? They had mainly bad kings. They had way more bad kings than good kings. And even the good kings had their own faults. So I would say.
Well, yeah.
Yeah, I think that when we have.
Okay, go ahead.
I was going to say is okay, I'll just say the function of voting.
No, you go. Okay. Okay.
This week on Re-Examination and Mo Rebuttal,
we decide who's going to speak next.
Right. We use the forced doctrine of politeness in order to get the other one's way. Anyway, so my thing is, I think that voting, at least it serves many functions. It shows a reflection through the records of where the trends are going, so as to show politicians where the winds of people's interests are. That can be a good thing and that can be a bad thing. But I think the decentralization part, where you have representation that comes from voting and not direct democracy, where all the laws come from voting, is a great calculation, and it is a lot more robust than if you had like a bad king and every couple generations people have to have an overthrow, like a violent coup against bad kings because the king is like doing unilateral crazy stuff.
Yeah, I guess I don't see, I guess, a lot of advantage for what we currently have over, let's say, a monarchy, right? Because in our current system, you made the argument in here that one of the prime reasons for voting is to basically fight against corruption. That would beg the question, how good is that being done currently? And I can even grant that the overall idea of a constitutional republic, implemented correctly, the goal is what you said it is, to fight against corruption and, people have a say, et cetera, et cetera. But what the overall goal of something is, or what the perceived value of it is, different from the implementation. I mean, that's why, for years, many people, including myself, thought libertarianism was such a great idea, man. But I hate libertarianism.
I'm not for libertarianism either. libertarianism is insufficient as far as I think there needs to be a moral structure within the government, which is why if you like removed the ethno-state weirdness from what is in much of the Christian nationalist movement and you just made it about biblical principles, then you could have called me a Christian nationalist. But until that is like done, then I'm out. So Aiden is asking to come into the stream. I was originally I just wanted to have a stream about atheism, and I wanted to go over like other things. If you want, Aiden, we can do more of a panel at some point later, I think, about different modes of democracy. But I'll go up to your comment because he says the voting function primarily serves as representation of particular group interests that could include the fight against corruption, but not always, such as voting blocks of bankers, voting for Citizens United as a means of corrupting the process of government via lobbying. Again, there is no system that you can tell me is like incorruptible or that you can't have some kind of workaround for. That's not my thing. My thing isn't democracy exists because it's perfect and it can't be corrupted. The thing that we have in America between the states, between the Senate, between the House, between the executive branch and the judicial branch are so many things that would have to work together in conjunction to get a lot done. And the same thing with like a constitutional Congress. All the level of coordination that would need to be done is so hard to do that and the reason it's hard to do is because if it's really truly in the interest of the country as far as the eyes of the people are concerned, then it will get done. But up until that point, people will duke it out, and that's why everything's not 51-49 like a direct democracy like you were talking about, Mo.
Right. Well, I was referring just to the voting blocks, right? The voting blocks vote for X thing, X thing tends to happen, right? But I mean, even you can even take it up to higher, like even like change of the Constitution, right? If they get 2/3 majority, they can change the Constitution to whatever they want, and then it is what it is. Now, obviously, that's a tall order, but it's not impossible. We've definitely had it. There's historical points when we've done this. Actually, going back to Aiden though, his question, I would really enjoy like the three of us, maybe another stream. Just to talk like political, voting, democracy. That sounds like a lot of blast. I'd love that.
Yeah, we can set something up like that for the future. It's just I know we both want to get to the Odinists and the Deists.
Yeah. I really am because look, maybe he'll convince me. Maybe I'll see the light. Like, oh man, this Odin thing. Oh, Thor. I can be Thor. Can I shoot lightning and fly? That'd be badass. Can I get a hammer?
Can you be part of the Avengers?
Can I be an Avenger? Yeah. Yeah.
All right. If you like, I think we pretty much come to the end of this one anyway. You know what? I'll play a little bit and see what we got left.
No, democracy is sold to the people that
Hello,
way.
Pixie. But let Bubblegum say one thing. He's been trying to talk for a second. Yeah.
Well, yeah, it's just so democracy is just sold to the people that way to give some sort of validation, like, oh, we ought to have this because we stand for truth. But when it comes down, to the nitty gritty, it's just secularist. It is the purest form of a secularist system because it's saying God is not the authority; it is man who is the authority.
No, it's not.
We're a democratic republic. A democracy is mob rule.
Right.
But I feel like we're comparing apples to window curtains here. Can we push play?
Yeah. Okay. So we're gonna move on. I do have another one where they Big Bad Mama and Aiden, and we're having like a general conversation, and then they try to do a pincer maneuver on me where they both try and gang up on me at a stream. Where like, so what about objective morality reexamination? I was like, oh, here we go. And then like, all right, well here, but we will move on. We'll start with Ryan Mullally here, who, that's where Shapingo comes from over there. And he is a deist. He has argued against Pisco and non-font. Yeah. So he believes in natural law, which is typically accredited to people like Thomas Aquinas. Natural law is kind of a competing theory to presuppositionalism. And you can, I think, did I already share with you the debate between Greg Bahnsen, the presuppositionalist, and R.C. Sproul, the guy who adhered more to natural law as a way to use apologetics, or no?
Yeah, I believe so. Yeah. Yeah, it was a good debate. It was really good.
Yeah. So
this guy's a deist. So he basically kind of believes God showed up, made everything, and then peaced out.
Correct.
Basically.
I mean, that's my understanding of it. I tried to ask more
deism,
questions. Yeah. And Shapingro is dropping some historical and background facts about it, and he offers to hook you up with Ryan Mullally, who, by the way, did appear before the Supreme Court. But Shapingro, I looked up the case that he did, and it was a 9-0, or sorry, an 8-0. Somebody recused, I think. So it was a pretty open shut case, whatever that is. Was he on the winning side of that one? I hope he was.
So I think it would be an interesting idea. I don't know if it will work or not, but I'm curious about it. So I'll give that a little think. But I see re-examination is here. I don't want to hold him up. I know other people might want to call in during today's stream, so I'll pull up re-examination.
Hey, long time no see.
Yeah, how you doing, buddy?
Been doing all right. It is pouring here in Illinois. I don't know where you're out from, but it is a delightfully miserable day out here in Illinois. We just love the fact that it's not winter anymore. So I heard something about theology and somebody else calling in. I didn't know whether like a panel had already lined up in the backstage and people are already lined up. So I just boo, Supreme Court loss. Just plunged in only to find out, oops, I'm the first one at the party.
No. Like the way these tend to work, sometimes they turn into panels. Some I'm not going to hold to.
This one became a panel.
Sometimes I'm just like doing my thing and people call in periodically. Sometimes it goes wild and everybody's jumping in. So what's on your mind? What do you want to chat about?
Yeah. So from the Christian perspective, like when you talk about natural law, I assume that would you say that natural law is a consequence of a deistic framework? Because my understanding is that you're a deist. You believe in natural law, which confers rights. In a Christian theology, we would say that rights are a consequence of human beings being made in the image of God and being made to have direct relationship with God.
Yeah.
In a deistic framework, how does that work?
I think compatibly.
The thing is, with deism, I don't see the direct relationship between the deistic God and the humans. He says that it would be essentially the same thing or comparable to it, but I don't. It just seems like the level of distance that is given by the deistic God would seem to deny the relationship aspect of it.
Well, yeah, because so Christianity, right? You take Christianity, you strip away everything, like Bible, the church, the writings, the miracles. You basically strip all that away, and that's kind of, he's saying it's compatible. But in that scenario, how do you have any kind of insight on like, let's say the nature of God, right? Or like what his laws are, or what his morals are, or if he didn't tell you, like if he doesn't tell you, he doesn't instruct his people, then how can you have that bit of that glimpse into a portion of his nature, right? Not the whole thing, obviously, but just enough to actually base anything on. Like, well, we can see how he dealt with this group of people. We can see his words and what he said as law and what is moral and what is right. Like without all that, without all of that, it's just, okay, this person, this being came, made everything, and you have no connection to them. You don't know, like, okay, in that scenario, in that paradigm, how do you know that it was a good God? How do you know it was, maybe he did it for a laugh, or who knows? I have no idea. Like, I have no idea where you make everything connect.
Yeah. If not for the fact that the first time I met him, I gave my knockdown argument against the evil God model, I might have used that. But he's yeah. I'm just saying, situationally, I would have to contradict myself in front of him. But I know what you're saying. It's like, if this God has not communicated to you, which I think I pretty much get into from the get-go, you can't know his expectations for you or his relationship to you whatsoever. He hasn't said anything.
Yeah, it's like, yeah, figure it out, bro. You're on your own. I think, you know, taking that approach, I mean, yeah, that humanity has made some horrific decisions throughout history, just figuring things out on their own. So,
right. Shapringo says, if you go to the Calvinist predeterminism take, then God could have pre-planned in all of his personal interactions. He's not limited by the construct of time. I don't think God made a tape and then just unwound it, you know, and it's not really him interacting with people. I believe that God directly interacts with his Holy Spirit in those who are believers. But moving on.
If you
like,
go ahead.
I was just gonna, based on that comment, I was thinking through it. If you took that argument, then I don't see how you separate God not being a deist God in Christianity, because then, like, you're commenting on, I guess, the implementation, but not the connection or the building around Christianity. Like, I mean, even if you grant that, like, okay, yeah, he put all that in place, and he knew it was all going to happen exactly the way it happened, and it's a deistic God. Well, then you still have insight to that God through. Then by definition, he wouldn't be a deistic God anymore. So I think it's kind of self-refuting.
Yeah, a deistic God necessarily has. I mean, I don't think anybody has proposed that I'm aware of a God who gave us a scripture, and then in the scripture says, "But I'm gone now, and I'm not coming back. See ya."
Yeah, peace. I got things to do. I got appointments to keep. I got some videotapes to return.
I'm taking an eternal smoke break. So yeah.
I think compatibly, like, basically, like, to imagine what the deistic framework worked like, just take what you just said, made in the image of God, because I'm not, like, you know, I am a deist, so I do believe in God. So made in the image of God, have a relationship with God, whether that's a active communication relationship or just kind of like a made in the image and therefore has some kind of connection with, you know, let's be ambiguous about that. And then the main difference is if you did not have access to scripture, because if you don't have access to claims of revelation and miracles, hence you don't have access to scripture, what would that mean? How would you need to treat people? What moral obligations could you infer just from those starting premises? And that's kind of where you get to natural law. You get to the idea that, like, because people are imbued by their creator with moral worth and dignity, there are ways that we must treat them, absent some divine command to the contrary. I'm not sure what.
Here's what I'm wondering. Where does he get the concept of forgiveness from? Just because we are given value as humans doesn't mean that we can say that I mean, you could probably make some kind of argument about justice existing, maybe. But how this is the same thing I posed to Defnot in our debate, which is, yeah, you can live in a world where there's just justice. You do something wrong and you deserve to get punished, and that's it. But
I don't even know if I would grant him that. I mean, justice, right? Because for justice, you have to have a moral value judgment of some kind. Where are you getting your morals from? And it's
right,
like,
but
I get my morals from natural law. Then what does that mean? Like, what does natural law mean?
I don't even know.
Explains.
I don't even know. Apparently, Thomas Aquinas was a big pioneer. He was a Catholic theologian, Summa Theologica, things like that. But I to this day, like, I hear about natural law, and it just sounds like what feels right and what feels objective, and things that, like, if you hear Ryan, it seems like he infers from his God-given conscience what is right and what is wrong, and I think he has good instincts with that. I think he's not suppressing his conscience, which is good. He is accepting what his conscience is telling him. It's just that his conscience alone is not enough. His conscience alone is not specific. He needs scriptures to know what God's specific expectations are, and who God is, what he's like. And I think that I'd be interested to know what his theory on forgiveness is.
We've received those commands, so I'm left a little bit in the lurch. Of course, if I did receive a divine command, that would supersede my own views on the matter.
Yeah.
Right? Which is why I think, like, deism is largely compatible with Christianity. It's kind of like in law or philosophy, we call it, like, the weaker claim. Like, if you're if you're guilty of murder, you're also guilty of manslaughter. If Christianity is true, deism is also true. It's just a lot less specific, if that makes sense. Right, like
as in there is a creator, by definition. It's just not as it's not in 4K like Christianity would claim a 4K version of God, if you will, and deism would be more like your crank TV back from the 80s or something.
Yeah, like I've never been able to schedule an online conversation, but like when I was like texting and DMing with Andrew Wilson about this topic, the way he framed it, he's like, it seems like we agree on 80% of things, right? Now the remaining 20 might be worth fighting about.
Yeah,
right? But like in terms of like the large worldview, like if a theological debate breaks out, I'm going to be predictably on the theist side, right? But then if a conversation about like the fine grains of like what does religion mean for society breaks out, that's when suddenly you're going to find that I might disagree with you. But of course, you probably get that from a Protestant. So, I'm not sure how different that really is.
I'm a Protestant, so that would fit the bill for me in terms of like, at least being Protestant. I'm not sure of all the implications that I'm going to have to skip over some parts where I say things about Orthodoxy you probably won't like.
That didn't conflict with her political views.
That's what I heard.
Yeah, which is kind of like that. That's kind of like the joke is because I have nothing against Protestantism, but I can't because the criticism that's infinitely flexible, not a criticism that deism can let right.
And that's true because deism is quite. I mean, I can't imagine what limitations you could put on deism other than God not real. Would not be a viable claim. But yeah,
a deist cannot make that criticism. That's not fair for me to make. So but
yeah, it's up to your discretion of how to deal. Or would you be a creationist of some sort, or how would that work? And this is where I get to evolution.
I don't have like I have not someone
Does he believe in evolution?
Deep dive the evidence on evolution. So I'm taking this all secondhand. I have never had any reason to doubt that animals change over time, and I've had no reason to doubt that evolution is, largely speaking, true. And I have no reason to doubt that the Earth is older than 6,000 years, for example. Which would be a biblical claim that I would have no reason to credit because I don't have access to Scripture as a truth source. I think the questions I have about evolution are evolution does not actually explain life. Because abiogenesis is not part of evolution. That's like a completely different thing, which is completely unexplained.
Yeah, it's about biodiversity. Yeah.
Yeah, which leaves you with the prospect of, which is a very classically deist worldview, like God winding up the clock and letting it go.
Yeah.
Right? Like an omniscient being could predict how things would happen and, let things go and take it from there. So that's one version. And then another version would be some kind of like guided or purposeful evolution where evolution is happening, but it's not actually completely random.
I don't know how you would argue for a purpose when the God left the universe. I don't know, like to what end would if the God would make a universe and then ostensibly abandon it, what is the purpose of the universe to see through in the first place?
Well, he's also earlier he said that he agreed from his point that made in the image of God is true, or did I misunderstand him? Did he grant that and say it? Okay, so then he's got a problem because if humans are made in the image of God, but then he also holds evolution's true, at what point did that that spark of the thing that makes us humans happen, and it's like, okay, so if you could say, okay, this is where the image bearer status started right here at this point. It's like, okay, so those guys, okay, this group of whatever these half ape, whatever, half people, would it be okay for them to kill and eat their ancestors?
It would be half okay,
because they're animals, right? They're not made in. Right. They're not the special ape people. They're not made in the image of God. They're animals. We can eat them, right? Like there's a whole. I mean, and also the whole morality thing. I don't know. I don't grant that they're compatible at all. I don't grant deism is compatible. Like, there's too many
Yeah.
questions that need to be like hammered down and discussed to even approach, making that claim, in my opinion.
Right. The thing is, he has to borrow the concept of made in the image of God from the Bible, because that's where it's said that we're made in the image of God, specifically Genesis 9:6. So I don't.
There's a from an argumentation standpoint, there's a potential there where he could, I don't know, he could say something like, I don't know how to phrase this, where like he recognizes that's true, but just because we have a word for it, verbiage for it, it doesn't necessarily mean that was what God giving it down and saying that's he might just have some other way to justify it, right? He doesn't because the Bible you can't really use it on this guy, right? You can't really use scripture to argue with this guy because he doesn't grant that he doesn't grant the thing in question, right?
You just have to. If you study scripture, you'll see different aspects of reality, and there are different aspects of reality that the Bible touches on that deism doesn't touch on. Like, so for example, I brought up forgiveness. We know that because of Jesus Christ, like, forgiveness is a real moral action. You can't forgive yourself. That you cannot absolve your own sins unilaterally by yourself. You don't have the authority to do that. You don't have the ontology to do that. That would be a fake moral action to absolve yourself of your own sins by yourself. But what you can do, and what you are commanded to do by Jesus, is to forgive, is to love your neighbor to the point of forgiving them and not accounting them. So you be like your Father in heaven. And that's the end of Genesis 5, talking about all that stuff, because God gives good gifts to the undeserving and the sinful and things like that. And we should be like our Father to do the same thing. That's not a prescription for government policy. It's a prescription for how we interact with people in general. But you could easily imagine a world where forgiveness doesn't exist. And so why should I believe that we should forgive in this deistic world?
Yeah, I think forgiveness is a good angle to cross-examine him on. I guess my only point was, if I was debating this guy, I don't debate with scripture anyway. But even if I was someone inclined to do so, I wouldn't, because, like I said, he doesn't grant it. You would have to go with forgiveness. That could be a good angle, because forgiveness is a concept that is. I agree with you, right? It's kind of a. We get that from the Bible and God's moral standard, but like, as far as like collectively, people know what forgiveness is, and they kind of they can kind of rationalize with it.
Here's my angle though. Here's my angle though. It's uniquely Christian, and the reason I say it's uniquely Christian is because every other God does not have an atonement. It doesn't have a Christ to take the punishment for sins. It doesn't have a sacrifice in our place. Like Christ is. So in every other system where God forgives people, they did sins, and so they deserve punishment for them, but God just forgives them, and it's just a hand wave. So it would be, I would say, ontologically no more different than a corrupt cop just letting somebody go. And because there was no justice dealt out for the sin that was committed, whereas if the sins of the world were put on Jesus, so that when he died and was crushed for our sins, and then he was buried and rose again, that the justice is dealt by being given to the sacrifice, the Lamb of God, and then the freedom, the acquittal, is given to those who are guilty as a free gift as a result of that. So we can't do that in of ourselves. We can't, put our sins on, somebody else for what we did, but God can do that. And that's the basis of forgiveness. But if Allah forgives somebody, Allah is unjust because they've offended all of an infinite Allah, God, and then he just forgives them when they have an outstanding record of sin that is unaddressed. So that would be unjust. But in the Christian model, justice is still dealt out. That's my background. That's like step 2 to the argument of why it would be uniquely Christian. Shapingro says forgiveness is an evolutionary justified mode of operation for society. Well, that is one take. I would say that forgiveness is a moral reality, and that there are moral realities in general.
So then the question is, okay, so if it's a operation for a society, then if that's what you're using to say we should have these things in our society, there's all kind of things that gives way to. I mean, why do we ever give up slavery? Really efficient for a society to have slaves, to some degree.
I think, yeah, I think that
imagine an entire population, right? Where like let's say like a warfaring and they're like doing great and they're prosperous and everything, but they're just so morally corrupt and crazy that like they see nothing wrong with just like completely enslaving this other group of people to like do all their menial labor, right? Like you could from an evolutionary standpoint, it would be justified. If we're getting our morals from evolution, right? If that's what we're getting them from. I mean, there's all kind of things you can think up that doesn't really make any sense, because you're essentially saying that we got to our morals by luck, by chance. It's just like this.
I would also pose it to anybody like this. It's like, if you have a wife or if you have somebody you love in your life, and ask, have you ever forgiven them? And if they say yes, under the definition of it was efficient for the function of the relationship, rather than I was wronged and I have forgiven them of that wrong in reality, then it just sounds, excuse me, it just sounds more functional than it does actually moral or out of a gracious thing. It's done more like to accomplish a goal rather than to actually have something happen in the moral realm where somebody's offense was let go.
Yeah, it's what is that? It's called something. I'm trying to think. Word escapes me. It's like
utilitarian.
Utilitarian, yeah, utilitarianism. Yeah, there you go. Utilitarianism. It's just whatever works, because essentially that's what evolution proposes, right? It's whatever works and gets your species to live and keep on living.
Shapingro, there's a difference between being not functional and only being functional. It not only is it functional, it's the right thing to do, is what we ought to do. And moreover, that they would have to be by necessity. Let's see. Obvious. So that which is moral is also, if you want to use the word functional, you could even say like harmonious with nature. That necessarily is, because when God creates the world, he calls it very good. And yet we corrupt it with our sin, and that we have lived in a fallen world. And that's why we have so much disease and calamity and disorder and all these problems, is because we have separated from our Creator ourselves by our sin. A holy God cannot stand to be around sin. And so if we're not going to die, there must be some distance between us and God, because if God stands in front of sin, the evil must be destroyed. Let's see. Oh, and therefore one hint that God might have let us understand his will is to understand what it's functional, as it's very least in line with anything that you will prescribe as moral, except for the fact that God's ways are not our ways. So, for example, we would have never thought that our Messiah would be born in a manger, poor, homeless, rejected, destitute, spat upon, punched, nailed to a cross, bloodied until he wasn't recognized as human anymore in terms of the shape he was in. Like, that doesn't appear functional to human eyes. The human eyes would be like direct, come down to earth and do all the things in a kingly royal manner. And that's not in all ways how Christ was. There were a lot of ways that God subverts our expectations. In fact, if you read much of the Bible, God is subverting the expectations of his servants all the time. With Gideon, he took away more people from his troops. It wasn't that he gave him a larger army, he just gave him a better army with smaller people. If you look at David, the prophet Samuel thought that it was going to be David's biggest, strongest, oldest brother. And then he went down the line, and then it was none of his brothers except for David, who was left out in the field somewhere, was not initially shown to Samuel. He was a small boy. If you look at Mary. You know, she wasn't in king's palaces, but she was a descendant of King David. She was very humble. There was no room in the inn. The Christ was born in a manger. Very, you know, not. A lot of things are done in a way that we would not have done them. So,
yeah, I was catching up with it, reading his text message there. One hint that God might have left us to understand. His will is to understand what is functional, as that is at the very least in line with anything that he would prescribe as moral. So, but if if you're going down the evolutionary line of reasoning, then that means that there could be, like, basically going back to my previous statement, then that means that our current moral structures of what we would say is good and just is just kind of having chance. If humans would have evolved a different way, there might have a completely different moral system. And if that's not true, if you're saying that, well, no, God knew all this was going to happen the exact way it happened from a deist standpoint, well, then I would have to ask the question that I was posing earlier when we started this with Ryan. Then what exactly separates, like, you know, a deist God from God in your worldview? Because if God just, you know, knew everything was going to happen the way it happened, he put everything in order, then you're kind of, I need to understand the difference. Like, what's the dividing line there? That, because it sounds like you're just kind of changing the starting point, I guess, or I'm not really sure.
Yeah. So what Shapingro is getting at is the multi varied ways that God has made the universe
evolved,
basically fixed the way in which humans and every other life form would have evolved, because the nature of physics and math as God made the universe would be deterministic in its outcomes of how life would form. But then again, it's still a problem of degrees of, like, when does image of godness come into matter?
Okay, but what he's typing here, that doesn't sound like a deistic God. If he's involved and he's pulling, you know, he's pulling things in certain directions, then that implies involvement.
Well,
the deistic God is the one that just, you know, makes everything that leaves, definitionally.
Yeah, but he could pose that there was a universe that was like an evolutionary assembly line, and he wound up the evolutionary assembly line and let it tick out its gears throughout time in such a way that that's just what it does, even though he leaves it. Maybe that's what he's getting at.
So not
an automatic factory.
You know, but once again, how is? I mean, look, I don't know how God did everything, right? I have no idea, right? But I guess my question is, what separates that then from just straight Christianity? Because, like, what makes it a deist God? Because I feel like it sounds like in the descriptions that I'm reading, and I don't know if Ryan thinks this way as well. It sounds like a lot of hoop jumping to try to make it fit. Like, well, he could do this, he could do that. Like, okay, like, I don't know. Okay, great. How do we even examine that? Like, he could do this, he could do that. I guess I don't understand. I don't understand the justification for justification or morals or.
Right. I would argue it. You can't know truth with a deistic God either, because he hasn't revealed anything about himself, and therefore you have no pathway to the foundation of truth in and of itself. So Shapingro says, I believe God can work in mysterious ways that aren't as direct as something like Scripture, don't you? When you say aren't as direct, I mean, Scripture details that out. And we know from Romans 1:18 that people have already been shown God and his eternal attributes. It's just that they suppress their knowledge and unrighteousness. So there's a truth in that, but then again, that's revealed by Scripture. And I think it's also revealed in human experience through creation, knowing that it's from God, and your conscience, knowing that you have purpose, value, and duties, and things like that. Shapingro, also, I think it's silly to say God has to follow some rules, which I'm not implying he has to follow some rules. I'm actually saying that it's actually to my point that if we say, well, God, does what works, well, it's like, the pathways that God draws for people sometimes are very direct and sometimes they're not very direct, and we don't know which is which. I said I'd stop. You got me. Yeah, I got you. Got you right where I want you, Shapingo. Up against the wall. Up against the wall.
Got
Hands
you where I want you.
Hands behind your head. Have you been drinking tonight, sir? Also, I think it's silly to say. Yeah. Okay.
What song is that?
It's just-
It'll be stuck in my head till I find it.
I don't know.
We
can play Baby Shark and get that unstuck out of your head.
Its purpose is at such a level of abstraction that it's difficult for us to detect or quantify. That's almost a math question. Like, is where we are on the evolutionary time scale likely based on the amount of randomness that would be required to get here? And I have no expertise in answering that question. But that's kind of where I'm on that. Do you mind if I bring up Balderson? Because I know he wanted to do theology, and we're doing theology.
Balderson
here we go.
Yes, Balderson is the Odinist in question. Sure, yeah.
Lightning strikes and he comes in.
I'm bringing you up.
He's got a hammer. Yeah.
I've actually talked to this guy very briefly, but on a panel way back then. But I don't. It was only one or two encounters.
He's actually on the Force Doctrine panel tonight.
Really? Well, the only thing that I know about him is I don't even remember what we were discussing. I just remember he was kind of spurring out pretty hard that night, and that's all I remember. And then there was another night where it happened again, and then that was the last time I saw him. But I know nothing about this guy.
Well, he has not spurred with me, even though I was pretty pesky in this conversation because I just kept stacking the questions.
Was starting down the road of theology, and since I know you wanted to do theology too, I figured we'd make a mini panel out of it.
Yeah,
that sounds nice.
Nice to meet you, Balderson. But real quick, what I was driving at is, if you believe that there's a difference in objective value between human life and animal life, I'm just wondering how you think that works. If you have either a creation model or if you have an evolution model, at what point do you make value claims and assess them?
About humans versus animals?
In terms of value of life, yes. Are we the same value as a gnat or a paramecium or something like that?
So the backing out of the theological framework for a second and just doing epistemics, I subscribe to what's called common sense moral realism. So that basically that means that it is a waste of time, silly, and just a silly endeavor, basically, to question things that cannot be questioned reasonably, and that we should accept some core facts about the world as we find them. Like, for example, our sensory apparatus actually detects an outside world. Other people have minds. I have some modicum of free will. There is a difference between good and evil, and we know it because we intuit that something is bad or something is good, and that is a very good reason to believe in objective morality. Right? One of those things is that it is impossible to live your life as a human and not understand that there's a difference in moral worth between humans.
So it sounds very intuitive, doesn't it? It just sounds like the intuition I have makes it escapable for me to think anything other than how I think.
Well, yeah, the moral relativism, that's got some problems with it. I mean, it's okay, well, the morals set of these people over here in this group, they believe this, and you can't really call that wrong, and then, but I have my moral relativism and with my group, and we believe this is right. So then what this reduces down to is you don't really have any standing to go to the cum warriors of Papua New Guinea and tell them they're doing anything wrong because, over there, they're just, it's the moral relativism. It's morally right over there. It's relative to them. It's okay, man. There's no reason you should put them all to the sword,
Yeah, that's almost where Balderson goes, but he does it a different way, which is gods have different zones, geographic zones, where he goes into
than other animals.
Agreed.
It's just not possible.
Okay, so Shapingro says Ryan is not a moral relativist, sir.
He just said he was. Did I mishear here?
Yeah.
He said common sense moral relativism.
So
it is a waste of time, silly, and just a silly endeavor, basically, to question things that cannot be questioned reasonably, and that we should accept some core facts about the world as.
Yeah, that's my understanding, is that he's not a moral relativist. In fact, natural law assumes that since nature is uniform,
before this, though, right?
Before this?
I think he is before, yeah.
Theological framework for a second and just doing like epistemics. Like I subscribe to what's called common sense moral realism. So
moral realism.
Oh, realism. Realism. Got it. Okay. I my mistake. I misheard.
We will plow ahead.
Yeah.
Oh, and we will not mute.
For example, our sensory apparatus actually detects an outside world. Other people have minds. I have some modicum of free will. There is a difference between good and evil, and we know it because we intuit that something is bad or something is good. And that is a very good reason to believe in objective morality, right? Like one of those things is that like, it is impossible to live your life as a human and not understand that there's a difference in moral worth between humans and other animals.
Agreed.
Like, it's just not possible. So it would be I'm not saying I couldn't be convinced to the contrary, but like in terms of like Bayesian reasoning, like the level of evidence I would need to be given that I need to give a deep moral worth to a non-human species is pretty high. Typically, when I ascribe moral worth to animals, it's because of our relationship to them. Like if we enter into a caregiving relationship with an animal, then that creates moral obligations.
Yeah.
Right?
So what would you attribute a being's moral worth to? Like, what is the quality that gives a being moral worth in your worldview?
To probably like directness of connection to God.
Dang it. Ads. That is a much better answer, though, than anything I've heard from an atheist. Directness of
I think I
connection to God.
missed it because I was jolted so much from the ad of Carnival Cruise. I want to go on Carnival Cruise now, man.
What gives us value? Carnival Cruise. Duh. But yeah, so I'll go back to the answer.
To probably like directness of connection to God.
Directness of connection to God is what gives us value according to him, which is, again, even though that's not the fullness of the answer, it's not a sufficient answer theologically. It is so much better than the atheistic model, which is like, I have consciousness like a gnat. You know, I am part of a community like a barnacle.
So moral realism. You know, he said common sense. Okay, well, the facts of these morals are correct. Where do these moral facts come from? Like, what's the epistemology of it? Like, how do you know? How do we know them? Like, what would be his answer for these?
I don't know what specifically his answer is, but if I had to invent a steel man for it, it would be along the lines of the impossibility of the contrary, and the impossibility of the contrary meaning that we as humans cannot escape these natural instincts which draw us to objective morality, which necessarily point to an intelligent creator of the universe that remains unnamed in his view. So Shapiro says deism is necessary if not sufficient for y'all.
So here's another question that I would have for him. Where does the motivation come from?
For
just
God
because
to
you
create?
know something, no, for the morals, like in his, like, just because you know, let's say you know something is wrong. What is the more like motivation to then do that thing, or to like, where does that come from?
Yeah, I don't know if I get to that. I was trying to. I think I asked him about justice later on. Let's see how it goes.
Because we know exercise is good, right? But does that mean everybody exercises? Yeah.
Oh, yeah, I should exercise. That's for sure. Directness. Would you also say that there is a connection to God of some degree between animals as well?
I mean, presumably, yeah. Though not, I would not say they're made in his image, but yeah.
Got it. So he does make a clear cutoff distinction between imago Dei, made in God's image, for people that he cuts off against all animals. So that's also consistent, and it makes sense. But the question is, how does it make sense apart from a revealed, infallible, inerrant source That's the question I would have for you.
But wait, he says there's a cutoff between animals and people,
meaning that only people are made in the image of God, and no animals are made in the image of God. Yes,
but under evolution, we're animals. So how?
I don't think he was non-committal. He wants to give you a Wikipedia article. He was non-committal.
Maybe he was agnostic on evolution.
I think he was edging on evolution, but he communicated in negatives rather than affirming positives, so as to, he's a lawyer, that's how that goes.
Got it. Okay. All right. Well, I'll give him some slack then.
Yeah. So if you came up against Alex O'Connor and he says, I'm an emotivist, change my mind, what would your counter to be? Because they usually use some kind of physical, testable, repeatable metric for every kind of knowledge. And therefore, since the only measurable metric they would have for moral engagement or moral judgments would be their emotions, what would you use to say, no, this abstraction is something that you can rationally fit into your worldview?
I don't know that you can ever change. Like, I always feel like that's a trap. Like that, I call that the Matt Dillahunty trap, where he goes, he goes, change my mind, and then you make an argument, and at the end he goes, oh, I wasn't convinced. And it's like, well, okay, that seemed like
I
a
remain
conclusion.
unconvinced.
Yeah,
I actually used that a few times. I mean, you can't help it. I remain unconvinced. Actually, do you in this discussion, do you guys get to going into truth claims, like what is true, and that's like that sort of thing, kind of dissecting that? Because
I didn't get a chance to, because I actually shot more of that towards Balderson's way, because Balderson's opinions seem to make even less sense than Ryan's, and Ryan's is much more reasonable than Atheists, much more reasonable than I would say Odinists.
He seems like a chill guy. Yeah.
Yeah,
I actually
like him a lot.
Probably enjoy. I would enjoy a discussion with him because he does seem chill, and I can tell he seems good faith, and that's great in the debate community. I would though, but from just going back to, well, never mind. You said he wasn't on the evolution track, so I'd like to pick his brain on that, because if
I'm saying he was non-committal, but he was probably leaning heavily towards more secularist old universe model, which again, church history has like a lot of old earther, or definitely more old earther people, but they still have 6-day or some kind of model of creationism. There's no evolution in church history. So,
well, I'll spit the point out since I was starting down there, but I'm going to be charitable and say that, he might not take a hard stance on evolution, but if he does, then you're getting your morals from an evolutionary standard, or some sort of natural evolution for your morals, then that does kind of conflict with truth claims, because then essentially your morals are based on survival, not truth, not what is true, or it basically just boils down to, I made more of me, and that's it. That's the only real truth to it.
I've made more of me, and my purpose is to make more of me, and their purpose is to make more of me.
To make more of me, and that's my purpose. Yeah, well, actually, that would be another. Where does he get purpose from? Like, that's like, how does he justify purpose without in a deistic framework?
It's infinite regress in a different way. Yeah.
I think, for me, emotivism is just like a dead end. I mean, like it's kind of like when you talk about a philosophy that nobody lives in accordance with. Mm-hmm. Like, nobody on earth thinks that their moral judgments are just like fleeting nonsense that has no truth value, no actual impact. It has no value. It's just their passion, and then act like that in the world. Because
that's kind of what some of the previous videos were basically getting at is, I firmly believe that my morals are just my opinion, and you can't tell me otherwise. It's just...
If you actually believe that, you would have to discount moral judgments as essentially meaningless, or just discount everything that comes of moral judgments as meaningless. And nobody acts this way. It's a bizarre... I always have a problem with a philosophy that forces you to make a claim, and you can always tell because they end it with the phrase, but it's all an illusion. That's always their out, right? Because I'll say something like, well, like, how can you really believe you don't have free will? Like, don't you experience free will every day in your life? Don't you have the experience of making choices? They're like, yeah, but that's an illusion.
That's an illusion.
Well, that's convenient. You know, like, don't you feel like there's right and wrong and you care and it's like really a big deal and like maybe it is worth something and it's not just like, you know, boo, genocide, boo.
Right.
You know,
the same thing with the objective and subjective. Well, just because subjective doesn't mean it's real. It's like when you talk about morality, yes, that's the claim you're making. It's they try to hide objectivity inside subjectivity somehow, and it doesn't work. Like to have the same protections of what is objective imported into any number of subjective possible positions somebody might have. It's kind of strange. Well, that's why I also bring up the what I call the infinite regressive value, because if I say, well, if you have a bunch of kids in a school and you're teaching them creation, I've said this like 3 times through three different timelines in the multiverse in this video now, you would say boo because you don't like it.
There's infinite universes where you said it again.
Yeah. Attributing some value to what you call science, or you would call evolution. The infinite repetition of the infinite regressive value. And people should know true things. And I ask them, why should people know true things? Because it would benefit. What gives value to people benefiting? And it goes back to human life, or I would give value to consciousness. What gives consciousness value? And you never arrive at the bedrock. Kamala Harris does, though, Shapingro. Rock of what they're actually arguing for when they want to defeat you in an argument for atheism.
Yeah,
Kamala.
Atheism has atheist philosophies tend to have a difficulty grounding their values. There's a few that I have done it in some interesting ways. I keep talking about him. I wish he didn't quit the platform. There was a guy who he hated Elon Musk. So when Elon Musk bought Twitter, he quit X, which sucks because he was such a fun follow. But he was called Deontological Realist. And he was an atheist, but he believed that abstract objects were real. And that is how he grounded his like a moral philosophy as an atheist, which is really interesting because like if you ask him like, well, how do you ground that? He's like, well, I believe in abstract objects like the number 3 or the laws of logic or the number pi. I think these they're not tangible. You can't touch them or directly observe them, but they exist. They're part of the universe. But
you've been exposed now, Shapingro.
They're not limited to those things. One of them is the good. One of them is the bad. When you participate in the good,
too late. You already confessed.
You are doing good things. When you participate in the bad, you're doing bad. So he actually would ground it in a property of the universe, which was fascinating. But I never get to pick his brain about it because I can't talk to him anymore, which sucks.
Yeah, does this atheist believe that it requires a mind to have these, these concepts? Because it sounds like he's running Temu Tag. That's what it sounds like. He's trying to run like Temu Tag. Atheist version.
Yeah, I mean, there is such a thing as Tang, which is the transcendental argument for not God. Yes.
Really? Oh, yeah. Man, well, I'm glad you mentioned that. I gotta go look that up. I gotta be prepared for this because that sounds hilarious.
Yeah, it's also a fruity orangey drink that you can pour in a powder in your cup.
It is.
But before we go
NASA made it, right?
Too deep down this rabbit hole.
I thought it was an orangutan.
And thank you for joining. So just to catch you up,
NASA lies. More NASA lies.
Protestant interrogating a
flat orangutan theory.
Deist, but you are. Did you say you were an Odinist?
I'm an Odinist. Yes.
So worship the
here we go.
god Odin from the Norse mythos.
No, he worships the one from episode 1. Issue 1. Okay.
Yeah, Germanic. Yes.
Okay. So this is a pretty.
But also,
how big is your Germanic god's mustache?
To make it to stem off, having to clarify all that. It's basically also a monist position. So Odin's not the original god. He created this place, but he has a father. His father was created.
Okay.
And then
sorry, wait. I just thought of something. I have a question. I'm sorry. I don't mean to keep pausing it. So if he is like, and maybe he gets into this because I'm very interested. Does he believe that he can't get to his version of heaven unless he dies in combat? Right?
I have no idea.
So
he's not a spring chicken anymore either. So he better get to it.
Well, that's my point, right? So that also maybe in his paradigm of his religion, like if he's in the guest home and he's sitting there all old and decrepit and he's about to go, if he like reaches over and takes a cup, sippy cup, and throws at a nurse, does that count? Like, is there like ways to trick the trick the system to get into?
Just imagine.
Valhalla!
Valhalla, here I come.
Yeah, I guess we'll see.
Balderson bottle thrower.
There's an all.
The Sonic $6 All-American Smasher Meal. Great burger.
I wonder if only the worthy can throw that bottle that he.
I don't know.
That little sippy
and
cup.
then if he gets to Valhalla, does he have to use a sippy cup as combat forever, or is he stuck with that? Or do they give him? Do we get?
Reminds me of when the Amazing Atheist says, like, if you die wearing a certain shirt, you're that shirt ghost. If you die a fat man, you're a fat ghost. So apparently, if you die the hero, of the little Dixie cup in the nursing home, you are
That's
the
just
Dixie
you.
cup in the nursing home ghost.
That's terrifying. I got to make sure that I'm looking stylish and fresh all the time.
Is all force physical? No. And sometimes it's just social. Like how I'm forced to one day shave my head because I am losing it, man.
Okay, so that's what I was going to ask, because even on my, I haven't looked at this in a while, but I do have some Scandinavian blood, so I do Norse mythology. I do know a little bit about my understanding was even in Norse mythology or like Greek mythology or these kind of like more pagan myths, there's always the starting place, which is like the one. And then that creates something else, and then that creates something else. I think, if I recall correctly, it was Ymir, who was like this hermaphroditic giant who then spawned.
Not hermaphroditic.
Not just.
There's a counterpoint. So Ymir is so it starts out as just one thing, and then it splits into a masculine and feminine. And this also, I'm also an alchemist, so a lot of my things come also from a lab.
It just seems like a lot of work to begin believing these things. Like, I wonder how it all began for him. Like, you grow up in a nation
where got the Philosopher's Stone, man. You heard that shit? He's an alchemist. He's got the Philosopher's Stone. He's gonna be able to. You better watch. He claps his hands, puts to the ground. He's gonna start summoning things.
Rex doesn't get that rights are a dream. Life can be a dream. Life can be a dream.
Can you measure social force? I believe
you can measure them in fear
you
units.
Metrics.
Yeah, or like
there's metric. I mean, it's not like depends on what your definition of measure is, right?
There's level 5 cringing in fear, and there's level 10 cringing in fear of other people's thoughts of you. So
if you have a social propaganda that pushes, let's say, all women should go to college, and they run that for 30, 40 years, and then a bunch of women spend their baby making years in college, and then we have like issues in modernity. I think you can measure that, yeah.
Shapinger, I think you just like to measure everything.
Filtered. And so the masculine, because that is the physical side, you can't really divide the immaterial, you divide the material. And the material side is an ice in a fire. And then the immaterial, Gununga gap, the void, pulls those two things together. And where they meet, that's where life appears. And so then from that, it's Ymir and a Dumbla. A Dumbla is the great cow, and she
licked the ice, right?
And licks the ice. So you have a feminine component to match the masculine component. And from that,
naturally, when you lick the ice,
did he just?
When the cow licks the ice,
did he just infer that all women are cows? This what it would sound like to me. I don't know. He said the feminine would be the cow that licks the ice,
which is I'd actually like to hear the Jordan Peterson version of this. The feminines are chaos, and the chaos is a chaos cow. The chaos cow licks the ice, and that's where you get the masculine. I don't know. How does this even work?
That's when you know that you're in hell.
That's when you know that you're an alchemist.
you think that you have a beautiful wife, and then she ends up being a cow, and then she licks some ice. That's when you know you come home. When you're at work, and you think about your chocolate cake in the fridge, and you think about it all day. And then you get there, and you realize after a hard day's work that the chocolate cake has been eaten by your cow wife. Don't you know? Because he's a Canadian, right?
Shapringo's calling us to fairness. He says, guys, be fair. When Christians are talking amongst themselves, they make a lot of leaps that are obvious to them. Ryan is showing his understanding, so Balderson made a leap. Yeah, these are very foreign ideas to us. So in the package in which they were delivered, we are engaging with them, and I have not heard any of these. Like, in my mind, the theology of Christianity, in the sense that there is one God, is very simple compared to a monist, Thor, Odinist, regional god sort of thing, and how complicated that is. And in terms of, like, in Christianity, God is spirit, and we worship him in spirit and in truth. And it makes sense to make a distinction between the immaterial and eternal versus the material and temporal. It seems to make a lot more sense to us than to talk about things that are divine and what you would think should be or should have been foundational to reality, rather than being mixed in with and somewhat apparently subservient to reality. You know, like a cow that has some kind of divine or earth-shattering power. It just seems so obviously not workable to me. So that's where I'm coming from. Yeah, I'm
coming from. I just think it's funny. I think it's funny to
it's
get
funny
up about this. Like
to me.
That's and I'm not throwing any shade at Ryan here. Ryan's just like, let this guy go on. Like Ryan seems to be chill.
Yeah. Do you mean to tell me you've never met a non-Christian that had difficulty with the Trinity conceptually? I've never met a Christian who hasn't had difficulty with the Trinity conceptually. But difficulty, I would argue difficulty is different than necessary absurdity. And that the cow thing is really throwing me.
Yeah, that one I actually struggled with that for a while because I originally was Protestant, and it was non-Trinitarian Protestant. So
I think non-Trinitarians aren't Christian, to be frank, because then
I would agree.
Yeah. Yeah.
Derives the other slew of beings, the giants, dwarves, things like that, and the gods.
Oh, of course. Okay.
Then from those, eventually, so you had Odin's father is Bor, and his mother is Besla, and so these are all giants. So he's derivative of that. He's not the all, but the actions that he takes makes him the all father because he goes through the sequence of events that the all were going through.
So then exactly. So that's kind of what I was getting at. That like though there's many gods in the belief system, there was a singular origin point if you trace it back far enough. It's just that Odin is not the singular origin point. Okay,
right.
And then just to like integrate into the previous conversation, where re-examination and I were, and re-examination, please correct me if I'm wrong, is he was interrogating me on my belief system about how I ground human value. Like, how is it that I get to the place where I can feel confident saying that humans have moral worth and dignity and start talking about natural law? I'm curious about, Balderson, to ask you kind of the same general question, because you, in our last conversation on Sarah's show, said that you don't actually believe in objective morality. So
absolutely not.
I guess that's curious to me, because like if you worship Odin, and if Odin gave a command, like it is good to do X, wouldn't that be an objective moral fact at that point in your belief system?
But not everybody's an Odinist.
And so he only commands Odinists?
And he doesn't.
Yeah, he's in this.
Sounds like you can opt out of Odinism if you don't like it anymore, and I think he gets to that point in the conversation.
The way we see things, I don't deny like the Christian God. I don't deny the Indian God. They're just fine, and those people got made by their own gods.
Did you catch that?
Those people got made by their own gods. So we all have different origins.
Yes,
like from
we're all made
like a species.
Yeah, somehow
Okay.
all the gods agreed to make people who could interbreed with each other. One species, but they each have different gods who made them.
So how is that reflected in, like, is that reflected in genetics? Does that mean that certain people have a genetic line to their god?
I guess.
So what would be the okay.
Yeah.
I don't know.
I don't know either.
I don't deny that. Adam and Eve are made by the Christian or the Jewish God, but then there's other people, and he never says he made those people. Like, my gods are from.
They are descendants of Adam and Eve, so he purposed that they exist. But yeah, when he says there's other people, I don't know what he's getting at. I mean, other than they are descendants of Adam and Eve.
From the Germanic area. They don't cover the desert. They don't cover all those other people. And scientifically, you can't convince me that people come from one source. Like, if I was to take a loaf of bread and I set the conditions that are good for mold, I put it in a nice, dark, damp, warm area. Mold is not going to appear on one spot and then spread from there equally. Mold's going to appear on 50 different spots, and those spots are going to grow in, some of them are going to get bigger, some of them.
Yeah, but mold grows from spores, and spores travel through the air, but humans don't travel through the air but spores.
We're all fungus is what I'm hearing. We're all we're fungus.
Fungus among us.
Aren't going to grow near as much, but it's going to appear all over the bread. This is just the way the world works. Things don't start in a singular event like that. So I have no problem with their gods having their own rules and those people living by them.
So if one guy who came from one god punches another guy who came from another god, where's the international court that adjudicates what happened?
Anytime you're putting violence onto another person, then obviously you can choose not to defend yourself. I guess that choice has been made quite a few times. It don't seem to work out great, but that's just the way the world works.
Oh, but I'm saying, like, is there? So when he says that's just the way the world works, is he making a claim akin to force doctrine? Because he didn't really answer my question of if somebody is wronged, how between two different god zones, how are they adjudicated? And that he didn't really answer that.
Well,
he just talked
your
about
question.
like,
were you kind of getting at, like, what is the moral foundation to decide who is right and wrong?
Yes.
Cross. Got it. Okay. Yeah.
Yeah, the words the international court means, like, you got two gods, you got their zones, they got their territories, and one guy originated from God A punches a guy who originated from God B. What happens then? Is there just injustice that stands? Is it not injustice because they have two different moral centers? How does that resolve itself? Not apparent to me. Do you guys realize before evolutionary theory, it was widely believed that rodents were spawned from grain or hail bales that have been left out too long? Yes, spontaneous generation was that theory, and Louis Pasteur was the one to disprove that. And also, let's not forget Lamarckism, which had to do with the idea that animals acquired attributes and traits throughout their actions in their lives. So yeah, there were different alternate theories to the origins of animal species that denied God. A universal law that's broken even at the point of barriers, in your view, between two peoples from two different gods, if they have two different jurisdictions, if you will.
To make it an extreme example, right? Like, and because everyone does this, let's do the Nazi Germany example, right? Like, well, no, because like genociding another people who have a different religious belief.
Right. They got the Germanic gods. They got the Jewish god. Now what?
Yeah, that would seem to fall outside the ambit of the moral system that you're describing, right?
Yeah. Yeah, it's definitely there's nothing in any of our texts that say to genocide anybody. That's some awful shit.
But is there like a transcendent international universal law, if you will, governing all worldviews, or no?
No, you're going to have to at that point, and this is just the world. Might's going to make right. You bump up against uglies with somebody else, and you have a disagreement, and it's not your culture. You're just going to.
I think he used the wrong term there, but we're just going to let that one go.
A war, and whoever's stronger or smarter or whatever is going to win.
So you'd say reality is the aquarium that we share with our gods, and we're all just kind of in a tank, and we have our own islands in there. Is that a fair illustration, or no?
That's fair. Yeah. That's fair. And then all of it is the aquarium. Basically, is the all. So
and then are you obligated to accept all accounts of views, or can you pick and choose? So I guess what I'm saying, like, if somebody, like, if you ran into like a Satanist, for example, or like, I think on Sarah's show I gave you the example of a hypothetical culture where they just blind their kids to appease some like horrible god. Or I think Andrew Wilson is fond of, like, what is it, like the warriors?
Yeah, we don't need to mention it, but yeah.
Andrew Wilson has begun the all-known unspoken.
Papua New Guinea.
Everybody knows what it is, and no one wants to say it out loud. But once you hear it, now you're part of the game.
So you just come up
tribe
with
that does bad things to their young boys.
Yeah, just come up with whatever the most awful religion you can think of, and use that as the hypo, right? Mm-hmm. Do you ever feel comfortable being like, nah, that's a false god? Like I don't know what they're saying over there, but like that couldn't be right.
Not that.
I mean, I wouldn't say it's a false god. I'd say it's one that I don't care for. I definitely have opinions on things. Now, where things get funny is, because I, like anybody else, I have likes and dislikes. There's religions I think are complete garbage, 100%.
But you don't think they're false. You just think they're garbage.
Yeah, 100%. Just because I don't particularly care for tapioca pudding.
How could he say, though, under his worldview, that the tribe in Papua New Guinea is doing anything wrong? Like, what is he appeasing to make that claim? If all the other religions are fine and true, right, and their moral structures, then what grounds can he even have a moral opinion on it?
Maybe Odin obligates him to do that. I think the question I ask later is, how did he establish the rules of reasoning that led him to think that Odin was the right god? And he probably has. It would probably have to do with his lineage, that he's Norse, so therefore, go with the Norse.
Just don't mean to throw us out there, but I just realized what time it is, so I'm good for about another like 15 minutes, and I got to head out.
Sure, that's fine. There is, I mean, I've been doing this 3 hours now, so there's actually a part at the end of this video where, what did I say to him?
Oh, geez, it did turn into a panel, huh?
Oh yeah. This is like barely the beginning. I don't see why the mechanics he puts in place govern the universe should not preclude a system growth for us biologically, especially considering the Christian worldview runs most of the world, thereby giving evidence to the justness of the ideas. I think my brain's broke, Shapingro.
I missed the second part of the first thing.
Okay, so he says, I don't see why the mechanics he put in place to govern the universe should not preclude a systematic growth for us, biologically, societally, etc., especially considering the Christian worldview runs most of the world, thereby giving evidence to the justness of the ideas.
Okay, but did the Christian worldview have to evolve? Or is it based on an unchanging God?
This is why Shapingro needs a microphone set up so we can actually have these conversations more in depth, because I've talked to Shapingro before and he's just a fascinating person to talk to. It feels like in order to give me the lessons I need in terms of like mathematics and logic that he understands, he hasn't been able to stoop low enough to give me it in understandable terms. So more fool me.
Chocolate pudding's good. That doesn't mean tapioca pudding's false. It just means I don't like it.
But don't the religions kind of make exclusive truth claims? Like we were talking about, like the, in the Norse system, there's the void, and then there's Ymir, and then the ice and the cow licks, and there's an origin story, right?
Mm-hmm.
But all the other religions have a different origin story.
Mm-hmm.
So are you saying all those origin stories are true? Because if you look at yours, it starts with there was nothing, and that's very common. Most origin stories start with there's a void, or there. I think in Norse mythology there's a void and there's fire and ice, but like it's a common motif. There's a void and then there's something, right?
Yeah.
Right. Or like another claim, like Isaiah 43, I've got here, verse 11 and 12. Even I am the Lord, and beside me there is no Savior. I have declared and I have saved. I have showed that when there was no strange God among you, therefore ye my witnesses, saith the Lord, that I am God. Before the day was I am He, and there is none that can deliver out of my hand. I will work, and who shall let it? And there's one about him. There are no gods before me, formed before me, and there shall be no gods after me, which is an exclusive claim against Mormonism, at least.
So that's what I mean. Like it seems like I think there are some religions that are compatible. Like you like if you wanted to make an argument that like the Jewish God and the Christian God is the same God, and one of them is getting it more right or more wrong than the other, I think that's a pretty decent argument.
Isn't that typically thought that there was one covenant and now there's another covenant, and it's the same being continuous through it, but the covenant with the interrelationship with man changed?
Yeah, and if you take that point of view, then if you were Jewish, you'd say it's the same God. The Christians just kind of made up the second covenant. That's just not right. And the Christians would say, of course there's a second covenant. They just don't acknowledge the second covenant. But you could imagine that being a compatible belief. But I don't think like Odinism is compatible. Like I think Reexamination was saying, they're making an exclusive truth claim. Like,
but why do I need it? Why do I need it to be compatible? Is my question.
What I'm saying is they can't be true at the same time.
Yeah, if you have a coherent, do you claim that the all is coherent?
That all?
All.
It's fairly self-obviously coherent. It's everything. We're here.
Well, that's the thing in question: is if it is everything, is it coherent? And if you say that he's not denying the other gods, and I think he may or may not have named the Christian God the God of the Bible. If he's saying he's not declaring that they're not real, then what is the point of saying that? Why don't you just say Odin's real, and everything else is false? Why don't you just say that? But he didn't say that.
Yeah,
he seemed extremely inclusionary.
It seems to be a P and not P contradiction. Like all the other religions and gods are correct and true, but if you examine all the other gods and religions, they have various claims of, like even Christianity, the scriptures you brought up, there is no other God before me. Like, okay, well then Christianity under his paradigm would have to be false. So it seems to be a P and not P contradiction.
But if each person has their own gods and origins, and it's equally consistently in the same universe, and they all make, or many of them make, exclusivity claims, how do you reconcile that?
Well, you can make claims. That would be where my contention is that the Christian God is claiming to be the all, and absolutely is not all. And in fact, even from a scientific standpoint, everything's a descension from that being. When you look at the origin stories, is a descension, and that's not the way the world works. There's half of it goes, because this is why you got the fire and the ice. The fire wants to rise and the ice wants to sink. You have a descension that matches the us, and there's also an ascension.
I'm not entirely sure what that means, but it does kind of remind me of when me and
Yeah,
Ryan
neither
were on with people. What?
Neither am I. I was thinking the same thing. What is this? We got fire and ice. I don't know.
Yeah, maybe he's talking about Bjorn Borg and John McEnroe and their rivalry in the 80s for tennis. They were called Fire and Ice. Pisco on Tomato Channel, and I said that the proposition, Pisco brought up the proposition of a evil God. How do you know God's not evil? And I said, I'm going to skip over this because I've gone over this one. I'm not. It's an absurdity. So that when it comes to dualism between two competing structures, that's hard for me to accept based on things like that.
Well, it's not just...
Well, that's because you're caught in the duality. You understand that, you know, there's certain people at some point in time. All
you know, he has so many cats, you'd think he'd worship an Egyptian god.
Have to do is look at something like hot and cold. And this is where things become very esoteric. You understand that all of that is just temperature, but when you're caught in the duality of it, some people like it very hot. I know people that love it when it's over 100. I know people that do polar plunges on a regular basis during the winter and hate it when it's hot at all. These two, you can, when you're labeling something good and evil, you're just giving your preference on which side, on which spot on the polarity that you want to sit, and you think that that spot is good and the other spot isn't good. But the people on that other spot, they think the same thing.
So I would say that goes back to kind of what I was saying earlier about the regressive value part, because if you're going to say that good and evil are just preferences, then it makes no difference whether or not I change my mind to agree with you or not, or if you change your mind to agree with me. So then no one belief is actually better than the other, if that's actually true.
On an individual level, absolutely. But in the way reality works out is we as individuals live in groups. And as groups, we come to agreements with each other because there's certain things we like and don't like as a group in general. There's going to be people in the group who have differences in them ideals, and those people, they're either, if they express those differences, then as a group you either reject them or you try to bring them into the fold or whatever. And easy understanding to understand that morals have a sliding scale to it is the age of consent.
Is it true that morals have a sliding scale to them?
For a minor, you can read something as wholesome and widely accepted as Little House on the Prairie, where you got a 30-year-old marrying a 14-year-old, and that's perfectly acceptable in hooking up and courting a 14-year-old. But in today's society, that absolutely is not flying. Absolutely. Can you say that these people were bad people because they didn't agree with your sliding scale of morality, and here's where it sits today in the agreed upon age that we have today? And as a matter of fact, there's other countries that don't agree with that age assessment, and they don't live by that. Are those people
again the non agreeing? I mean, that I hesitate to ask him about science because he's an alchemist, and I don't believe alchemy is real. I don't think you can turn lead into gold, which is the typical understanding of what alchemy means. So,
if you watch Full Metal Alchemist, you understand that when you can do that, you've got the Philosopher's Stone. That's like the holy grail of alchemy. He's just not at that stage. He needs he's probably like a third tier alchemist. He needs to get to like 5th or 6th to be able to start making gold. That's what I learned from Full Metal Alchemist, the anime.
Oh, Newton's 3 laws. I probably do, but eventually I'm going to be up against the law of the wall. We could pick this up another time if you like. We could go for a couple more minutes and pick this up another time, do like a part 2, because this discussion, the panel, everything does go up in fascinating ways, and we can throw in Aiden if you like, if you want to schedule something.
Yeah, I'm game. Just let me know kind of your schedule, and we'll try to find something that works. Most of my time slots is the evening, and then Fridays I don't get on until usually pretty late. So
yeah,
but just let me know. Just hit me up.
Yeah, let's see. Let me go towards the end because there is a part where he talks about how everybody's brainwashed and we just kind of follow our own.
Dunkin's $6 meal deal.
But
Get
of
a
course,
medium
another
Oh,
ad.
man.
This is just so we can get Ryan more money. You know, because
Yeah. This
lawyers
is his fault.
need money.
This is he decides how many things the setting. So this is his fault. Just saying.
Yeah.
Content tomorrow, and I will see you then.
Let's see. There is a part where I ask.
Non-fawn. Haven't seen non-fawn in a minute.
Oh, dude, I've subscribed. He's kind of fun to just watch his show and just make comments. You know, that's what I do a lot. Okay.
Might be in your future. Grassroots. He argues for capitalism and now Georgism, yet is a wrench communist. Grassroots. Final thoughts.
Okay, where is this?
And it's not here. So
it's like
Can we
good
get
logic on
Grassroots
layback
Dog on the
law.
phone?
he has been with you, maybe with Wick. I don't know whoever else shares that particular strain.
Anyway, there's a point where I say Balderson is like, we all just believe our the brainwashing, not the brainwashing, but the programming, I think is what he said, the programming of our society. We just believe that, and those as a sum total of what we believe, and everybody believes what their own programming is. And then I said, is that true, or is that just your programming? And that made Ryan laugh. So
yeah.
So but I was trying to find that part, but again, that's way ahead. I think we were somewhere in the 40-minute range.
But that's just the way the world works.
Oh, but I'm saying
it seems
like that's somewhere in here.
We'll just say
it was the second cat. The second cat was up there watching him, making sure he wasn't saying anything. Yeah,
against Odin.
yeah. He was keeping him in line, making sure he wasn't saying anything crazy.
Live in groups, and as groups, we come to agreements with each other because there's certain things we like and don't like as a group in general. There's going to be people in the group who have differences in them ideals, and those people.
Yeah, it was around this area.
Immediately strike out.
Yeah. We'll just say 51-10. Why not? Now,
Sounds good.
Shapingro, for whatever reason, whatever is called vacuous truth or trivially true, it just doesn't stick in my mind. If I'm making a true statement and it's just like that's only true provided certain assumptions and conditionals, I'm perfectly fine making them. I'll probably continue to make them for the rest of my life. You can continue to point those out to me, but whatever the definition is, it's just not going to stick, and I can't tell you why, but that's just the way it is. I'll just say obvious things without regard to whatever a person tells me they believe or whatever a person says their worldview is. I'm still going to ask them the obvious questions, even if they're trivially true, and I'll probably do that for the end of time. Mo, do you have any thoughts for us tonight?
No, not much. I'm gonna do what this guy over here is doing. Damn, right there. Yeah,
that's probably a good idea. I'll probably do the same. I'm trying not to be up as late as usual, but I did want to at least get one stream in this week, and I think I've paid my dues at 3 hours and 17 minutes. So I thank you for coming along. It's been
thanks
a
for having me
pleasure.
up.
Yep, and then hopefully soon we can get Rev back in the program. But in the meantime, we'll try and set something up with Aiden, and then you guys can talk politics because that's more your guys' realm. I used to be more into politics, but I kept giving up because we had Obama and we had Biden, and it's very demoralizing. I was like, I don't even want to know. Get me out of here. Get me out of this world.
Well, I'm definitely not a political debater, but I do like to discuss, I guess, like kind of the frameworks of it and have discussions around it. I'm trying to get better at it, but
Are you a monarchist?
Because I do believe we would be better with a monarchy. Yeah.
Is that your best theory for government?
I think it's better than it's a better system when you have a population that is not morally good, right? They're kind of like hedonistic, more because you can go back to the founding of America. Its system, it worked, it did, and it had a lot of benefits to it. But it's only a system that really works if the population makes moral takes moral actions, or they believe in some sort of like morality. And I think you get into current day in modernity, you can just kind of see the failings of that system to kind of erode.
And we're spoiled milk these days.
Yeah. So it's kind of one of those situations where you can look at a snapshot in time and say, well, yeah, it's self-evident that it worked, right? You can just look at where we're at and you know, how strong America is as far as like you know, superpower and that sort of thing, if you want to measure from that regard. But it's I think it's crazy to have let's say you collectivize and you get, you know, a guy in there for 4 years, and then he tries to correct a lot of the messed up things for 4 years, and it's like, well, it's only fair now we got to give the reins back to the psychos so they can take the ship and steer it into an iceberg. It's like, okay, and then we're gonna do this whole song and dance over again. So I think that can only go on so long. So it's yet to be seen how long.
Very interesting case. I have.
So I want the Byzantine Empire 2.0. That's what I'm saying. Come on, let's go.
Well,
over 1,000 years, America's just a you know, a test compared to that.
All right.
Experiment.
One of these days, I'm going to have you, Mo Rebuttal, and I'm going to invite Stefan Molyneux over, and it'll be the monarchist versus the anarchist. And we'll see.
He's back in the game. I wouldn't mind debating him one day, especially on his moral grounding. I actually have his book, and I need to go and read his work, because he has a theory of how he grounds his morals, and it makes sense.
Yeah, it's called UPB, and it is kind of like an atheist precept according to Rationality Rules, aka Stephen Woodford.
Okay.
So he says to the way he had set it up, to attack UPB is to endorse UPB. Just the way it works. Again, I've listened to his lectures on it, and it just never really stuck. And I wonder if the infinite regressive value could also apply to UPB in a meaningful way. But I would have to study it again, because there is a debate he does with Rationality Rules, aka Stephen Woodford, on UPB. So that might be something to check out. It was just it's very interesting. But it just I could never, like, there are some people who are able to deliver their ideas in such a way that it sticks, and maybe it's the idea itself, because he's a pretty clear speaker, but it just never I wish I could articulate what it was or tell you what makes it what it is, but the idea is universally preferable behavior, not universally preferred, like, oh, I wish I was on an island and I had a mansion, but universally preferable behavior.
Right. I only heard it mentioned in his book, so I've done no reading on it. I did find it curious, though. Then I wanted to do some more reading on it. And I used to listen to the guy all the time back in the day, right? Like that was actually that was one of the few people way before I got in debate that I actually listened to that was debating. But now that he's back in the scene, that's it's good to see him.
Well, here's the thing. He's a smart guy. I liked a lot of his debates. I thought he was incredibly good at actually spotting objective. He's a moral objectivist, even though he's atheistic. And in one video, he's like, "Why do objective morals exist? I don't know, but they do." So even though he doesn't give a good explanation, his instinct is in the right direction. Here's the problem. As of late, as I go over his X feed, there are things on there that are basically, they have ethnic belonging togetherness themes going on there. And that's where I start to get a little suspicious of what's going on, because for many years people had said he was some kind of nationalist of the white variety, and I was like, you guys are crazy. You say that about everybody. Liberals just throw that out for no good reason all the time. And then as I continue to see more and more posts on X that value lineage in a way that I don't think it's due to it, and I see more of them, and they signal this way and that way, and I'm like, okay, maybe some of these criticisms were legit and I just never saw it before. I just couldn't pick up on the signals before. But it's sad because he was definitely one of my favorite YouTubers back in the day, especially mid 2010s. He was great at debate. He was great at articulation. He was funny. He was engaging. He was personable. But definitely not flawless. But I was actually thinking about going on his X Spaces tonight because Friday nights at 7 Central. I think it's Central. He has X Spaces, and I was going to try and have him look at the infinite regressive value objection, which, by the way, Alex O'Connor has also brought this up, but I can't remember where that video was. But the idea of why that and why that and why that because of that. Well, why is that? Because all that kind of stuff. But I was going to see if he could pop some holes in it because that'd be interesting. Because he's done a lot more thinking about philosophy than I have.
Yeah, that could be fun. I didn't know he did it on Friday nights. Might have to check that out. But I definitely want to go kind of... I think it would be one of those things, like if I'm going to go in there and have a back and forth, I need to understand the opponent a little bit more. So.
Oh, yeah. I was hoping to find a version of the art of the art of debate. Is that what he calls it? The art of the art of the argument.
The art of the argument, yeah.
Yeah, I was hoping to find a version.
That's the one that I have.
Oh, you own it?
Yeah.
Actually,
I think I just recently picked it up again, so I'm not even halfway through it. But yeah.
Yeah, I think back in the day they used to do a PDF version of that you could just download and read. But yeah.
Oh well, if it was on the internet, it's probably out there somewhere.
I'm gonna take you to court, Chipingro, and I'm gonna have Ryan as my lawyer, and just like Andrew's gonna do with Tilly Middlehurst, I'm going to take you for every red cent you've got.
I heard she doubled down on that, right?
Basically, Emmett was doing a stream about it today, and he was with the Thorpes, which was an interesting mix. But I was in the side chat for that.
Thorpes.
Yeah. I was surprised. I was like, I didn't see this.
Well, they've been regulars on Colin's panel recently, and so Emmett's on there. So that's probably where it came from. I've actually had a few exchanges with the Thorpes.
So usually it's like Crucible versus Thorpes, and Thorpes are allies of the Tomato, even though Tomato is because the Tomato is anti-Crucible. But I will say this, even though I also oppose Andrew in a few ways, even though we have lots of overlap on our worldview and our policies, the Thorpes also fully support, like I do, Andrew in his going forward to defeat Tilly Middlehurst on the defamation thing. It really does appear to be either some kind of defamation of some sort because there's no evidence that Andrew... Go ahead.
You got to take everything with the Thorpes with a grain of salt, right? Because I had no idea who these people were, and I had an exchange with them and started to kind of dig into who they are and what they believe in. We got into some weird territories, but to me, it became very quickly apparent that they are basically just a drama Spurg fest channel. Like that's all they are. They're just looking for the latest thing to get someone to Spurg over so they can clip it or that's their whole thing. So I don't really take someone like that. I don't take any of their arguments serious or any of their statements seriously because you have no idea knowing if they are you have no idea what they actually believe.
The cloud
it's always the mask is always up.
Right.
So.
There's just something weird too about the father-daughter duo in there talking about the same topics.
We talked about that.
Yeah.
We talked about that.
There's a weird vibe I get about the whole Thorpe setup, and they got a lot of it. They got a lot of attention. Well, I know, but that's there's rumors of things, but I just like that. I have no evidence for that. But
I grilled him on those specific things because once again, I had no idea who he was, and I grilled him because the things he was saying was alluding to certain things, the entailments of what his statements, and through that, it's like, best case scenario, you're just, a
troll.
You're a troll, and you're doing this for clicking. Worst case scenario, you really are in some inappropriate relationships with different individuals.
Yes. But as far as Andrew and Tilly go, I'm not a lawyer. I can't make any definitive statements, but if what she had said about Andrew was false and my gut tells me that's 100% false, then for the good of society and for the pushback against the excesses of feminism, it would be great for Andrew to absolutely demolish her case in court and have a very public defeat of what may be an untrue statement on Tilly's part towards Andrew. And I have
Johnny Depp 2.0.
Spinger says, it seems they're okay with you thinking the worst things about you because at least they're getting attention from their point of view.
Yeah, they just want attention.
That's so sad.
Yeah, sounds like hell. Honestly,
like how bad does your life have to be that you want the focus on you? You would use YouTube like I'm taking a lot more risk, just being on here, right? And I know that, but I feel like there are things that need to be said that aren't being said enough, and that's why I want them said, But
right.
But as far as the Thorpes, like, can you tell me what their mission is? I mean, it can't be like putting Catholicism in the best light.
No, I don't know. I think their mission is just money. They just want clicks. That's all. That's
so
the end all be all. I think it's just a mask. It's all just a mask. It's all just like they'll say and they'll purposely answer vaguely to get you angry, just so they can get a clip out of it. That's all it is.
I saw that.
So, I don't really play their game. Like I'll go in there and have exchange with them, but once I kind of understood the nature of the beast, I kind of just decided to kind of pull back on that.
Yeah, I saw that the Thorpe guy, Ben, is that his name? Yeah, he was on needgod.net stream. Now, needgod.net is a Presbyterian Protestant evangelist, and he goes on the internet and he goes to I don't know if it's monkey.com, but Omegle I think is gone, but he goes on websites where people are likely to meet him for the first time, and then he gives them the gospel. And Ben, sometimes he does like Q&As and things like that, and Ben Thorpe came up and apparently purposefully crashed out in order to make a sensationalist kind of video. That's what the impression I got.
Yeah, he does that sometimes.
Lame.
Yeah.
Anyway, Mo, it's been a pleasure. I hope you get all the rest you need. I also hope I get all the rest I need. But that's the trouble with streaming, because you become vampires. They're all vampires. They're bitten by the streaming bug, and then they have to hang upside and cross their arms over them, and
then you start to sparkle. That's the worst thing about it.
Right. All the other stuff is cool, but the sparkling, the immortality and the blood and all that kind of stuff, that's cool. But the sparkling, that's the scariest part of all.
That's really what, that's the worst thing for me. It's sparkling.
Striking terror in the hearts of everybody. All right. From all of us to all of you, all one of you at this point at night, thanks for watching, and we'll see you next time.
See you next time.